Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Jake Lyman is in with us today. Hello, Jake.
Hello, Jared. How are you?
Outstanding. It is Canada Day after all. Happy Canada Day to everybody out there and all who celebrate. And happy NHL free agency to, once again, all whom celebrate. And I did see Bob McKenzie has reported that the Nashville Predators have made a signing. Nick Pervix, a big right shot defenseman, $2.75 million on a 2-year contract, which is not a long term. It's not a lot of money. And again, he is a right shot defenseman. He played in 70-something games last year, so he plays. And he actually had a positive plus minus. Now, when you play on the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's probably a lot easier to have a positive plus minus. But for whatever reason, he has a positive plus minus. So that's good. Let's put him off to the side for a second because, again, that's a $2.75 million contract when Evan Bouchard's out here signing for $10 million. You know, it's not nothing, but it's a smaller deal, and that's okay. But let's put that to the side for a second because Robbie Stanley tweeted something out yesterday that I have got to start this show on. So Robbie was just listening to his favorite program, Stillman and Company, killing time before Pred's development camp yesterday, and he put out what he thought the lines were as of yesterday. Now, we'll have to make a change here. We'll have to adjust here in a second, but follow along. Robbie's first line, Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault. His second line, Stamkos, Svechkov, and Evangelista. His third line, Michael Bunting, Eric Holla, and Joakim Kimmel. And his fourth line, Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, and Zachary Leroux. His defensive pairings, Wilsby and Yossi on the right side, on his first pair, Wilsby. Shea and Michael Barron on the second pair, with Barron on the right side. And then Nick Hague, who was signed yesterday, and Tanner Molendyk on the third pair, with Molendyk a left shot on the right side. Now, let's say, Pervix is probably going in, and if I had to guess, he's going to slide in next to Brady Shea. So I'm going to guess Brady Shea plays the left side, Nick Pervix plays the right side. They'll figure out a left shot pair for Roman Josi, and then Hague on that third pair. But again, going by Robbie's lines, and let's just make the assumption, I should ask Robbie about this before I take his work doctorate and say these are Robbie's lines. I'm going to assume that he's taking Wilsby out of the lineup, and he's putting Pervix with Shea and Barron with Josi. So Forsberg, O'Reilly, Marchessault, Stamkos, Svechkov, Evangelista, Bunting, Holla, Kimmel, Smith, McCarron, Leroux, Josi, Barron, Shea, Pervix, Hague, Molendyk, UC Saros in net, Justus Annunen in goal. Now, I would expect if this were me, Ozzy Weisblatt might be in there over Joakim Kimmel, but that's a minor detail. The reason I wanted to start off on these lines, even if you add Nick Pervix into the group, who I will get to in a second, I said to Robbie when I saw that tweet yesterday that those were the lines that he was expecting as of right now. And granted, free agency is not over, and the trade market is not finished either. But when I saw him run down those lines yesterday, I texted Robbie and I said, if that is the opening night lineup, Andrew Burnett is gone by November 1st. Because that is not a competitive team. And again, for the exercise and going over all of this, adding a $2.75 million right shot defenseman does not change you from a non-competitive team to a competitive team, though I do actually like the Pervix move, which we'll get to. At first, I was going to say they had too many left shot defensemen, but I still worry that even with the addition of Pervix, based off of what Barry Trotz said on the program last week, they're still probably going to move their best player, Roman Josi, and your top defensive prospect playing on their weak sides, Tanner Molendyk and Roman Josi. Fedor Svechkov and Luke Evangelista on Robbie's second line combined last year for 49 points. Again, on the second line. The hope is that each guy can produce 49 points or more. Would be nice. Much more, actually. So what they have right now And again, I am recognizing that free agency is only just beginning. But what they have right now is not good enough. If they're trying to win right now, which they have said that they are. Which takes me to today. The opening of free agency. The way to better your team. Have you seen who is available in free agency? I mean, I keep seeing names go off the board, and I've got all my guys on my phone, the Pierre LeBron and Bob McKenzie and all these guys. I've got them notifications pop up on my phone when they send out a tweet. So when they send out a tweet saying so-and-so got signed, I'm like, he kind of sucks. And there's a lot of players that I've been looking at and throughout this free agency process where I'm like, they kind of suck. For instance, The Athletic has their big board out. And guess who is one of the top players, the fourth best player entering today on the free agent market? Mikhail Granlund. Hate to say it, he's a bum. Which takes me to, again, today. I see names being traded. Victor Arvidsson to Boston. Victor Arvidsson has been absolute toast for the last 5 years. And he's having to waive a no-trade clause to go to Boston, which tells you what is not available for teams right now. So with free agency, it looks awful on paper. This team looks awful on paper when you write it down, even adding in Pervix, which again is a signing that I think I like. The coach last year, who is going to be the coach at least at the beginning of this year, never got through to the team and yet kept his job. And there are, again, not a lot of quality free agents out there, especially at the real positions you need, like center. So what do the Predators do? They've said they want to be competitive. But again, there's really no answer here as far as keeping Fedor Svechkov off the second line center position until he gets, better. So I think there are two choices for the Predators. The first is to run it back with a team that is going to look a lot like last year's team. Yes, Sissons is out, but he's replaced by Eric Halla. Yes, Jeremy Lauzon is out, but he's replaced by Nick Hague. Yes, Alexander Carrier and Dante Fabro are out, but they're replaced by Nick Pervix. Run it back with roughly a similar team and hope that the 2024-2025 Nashville Predators, who lost 52 games last year, who had 68 points and a 7th place finish, was just a complete mirage, and the Predators are actually, good, or start loading it up with young guys. So instead of putting Justin Barron or Adam Wilsby on defense, it's Andrew Gibson. Instead of Fedor Svechkov as the second line center, it's Brady Martin right out of the chute. And so I have to ask myself, what are the Predators going to do? Again, your options are run it back with roughly the same team you had last year, or put the young guys in there. Mullendijk, Gibson, Martin. Again, the guys that really have high-end talent. Maybe Kimmel. And it sounds like the Predators are going to try to do both. When I hear Barry Trotz tell people, hey, you'll see David Edstrom up here this season. Hey, you'll see Joakim Kimmel up here this season. That doesn't really sound like a plan to get a hockey team that never really bonded last year, never gelled for whatever reason on the ice. They never gelled. They never played cohesive hockey. That doesn't really feel like the answer. Yeah, you're going to go up there and you're going to play some, and then you're going to go down, and then you're going to go up there and you're going to play some, and then you're going to, again, that doesn't sound like the answer. So here we are. It's July 1. The Predators just made a free agent signing. And again, it's not a free agent signing that I, by any stretch of the imagination, am against. But it does feel that as we sit here on this Canada Day, there's not a lot of hope to be had for the 2025-2026 Predators, whom, again, they say they're trying to win with, whom they say they want to be competitive with. But if I may borrow a silver lining here, let's turn back the clock a year. On July 1st, at this point, Stamkos, Marchessault, and Brady Shea were signed. The Predators had just lost in the first round in 6 games to the Vancouver Canucks, and the real reason they lost that series, they were abysmal on the power play. And they had just signed arguably one of the best power play players in the history of the NHL, coming off of a 40-goal season. And yet, once again, they lost 52 games. They had 68 points. They finished in 7th place in the Central Division. They were the 30th best hockey club. So long story short, I don't know if I have the answers as far as how to fix the Predators. I have ideas, but I don't know if I have the answers or not. But the one thing I do know, this time last year, we thought we had the answers and we thought they had the answers. And how'd that work out for them? So let's not get too worked up on July 1st. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. If you want to weigh in your reaction so far to the start of free agency, to, again, this team that is in front of me right now. And Robbie Stanley, oh my, I asked him about his lines. I said, Robbie, we talked about his lines. Robbie tells me what he thinks is going to happen with his lines. We'll get to that. Plus, we do need to touch on the Nick Pervix edition. We will do that. 615-737-1025. It is Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Nick Pervix is a 27-year-old defenseman who has spent the past 3 seasons with the Tampa Bay Lightning. Mm-hmm. He was a late bloomer. He was a 6th-round pick in 2017, but he did not debut with the Tampa Bay Lightning until 2022. So in his 3 seasons in Tampa Bay, he played 69 games, 77 games, and 74 games. He's a right-handed defenseman.
Finally.
Hallelujah. If you're a Predators fan, he is a right-handed defenseman. He played a mostly third pairing role for the Lightning last season. But unlike Nick Hague, Nick Pervix 2 seasons ago was Victor Hedman's number 1 defensive partner. Victor Hedman, future Hall of Fame defenseman, number 1 defenseman for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Nick Pervix has experience playing with a top defenseman. So I could easily see Nick Pervix playing with Roman Josi on the top pair. I really like this signing. I think Nick Pervix fills an absolute need.
Okay, Barry Trotz, who has done very, very little right in the eyes of Adam Vingan, hits one out of the park with a guy that Adam Vingan absolutely wanted him to sign in Nick Pervix. I mean, Adam was basically doing cartwheels when he read off that Bob McKenzie announced that the Predators were signing Nick Pervix. And again, the cap hit is $2.75 million. And as Adam said right there, he was a defensive partner for Victor Hedman. Victor Hedman, last time I checked, pretty good in Tampa Bay. Now, as far as what Robbie Stanley said about his lines, in which I thought his line combinations would lead to, from yesterday, before they signed Pervix, I thought would lead to Andrew Burnett being fired by November 1st. He says if he had to adjust his lines, his defense pairs were Wilsby and Josi, Shea and Barron, Hague and Molendyk. He says Molendyk goes down to Milwaukee, which means Wilsby is still in the lineup, according to Robbie Stanley. Let me just say this. Wilsby sucks. That said, I do believe that the Predators, as of right now, it's just me because Barry Trotz was on our show last week and we asked him about the defensive pairings and he said we're going to find probably a right shot partner for Brady Shea. I'm thinking that Nick Pervix is going to be Brady Shea's partner. So they will flip Josi over to the right side. My guess is just based off the money, it'll probably be Nick Hague playing up with Roman Josi. Then it'll be Brady Shea playing alongside on the second pair, but it's really your first defensive pair alongside Nick Pervix. And then they'll put one of their many left shot defensemen next to Justin Barron on the third pair. Think Wilsby and Barron or Molendyk on the left side and Barron, something like that. Barron kind of stinks. Here's my issue. Again, how can you really be upset with a team that as of this morning, it looked like was going to have 5 left shot defensemen out of their 6 NHL starting D? So you can't be upset that they signed a right shot defenseman, which they absolutely had to sign. And they had been getting raked over the coals for what had happened with Dante Fabro, and maybe rightfully so. So you can't be upset about that. And you can't be upset about the fact that it's a $2.75 million AAV on the 2-year cap hit, because $2.75 million is truly negligible money. Here's my problem. You know I got to have a problem, right? Here's my problem. If Nick Pervix is a right shot defenseman at 27 years old, and as Adam pointed out, his 27th birthday was last month, so he is a young 27. He will play next year at 27 years old. If he is a 27-year-old, big, tall, right shot defenseman who played on the first pair with Victor Hedman, why is he only signing for $2.75 million? Shouldn't he be signing instead of a 2-year $2.75? Shouldn't he be signing for 5 years and $5.5 million? Again, everybody yesterday, Vingan and Robbie and all the hockey heads, everybody on Twitter, everybody said Nick Hague sucks. Again, I didn't say that. They said it, but I'll take their word for it. So if Nick Hague is $5.5 million for a less valuable, easier to find left shot, then why is this guy, who's not a pending RFA, this guy could have signed with anybody in the league, and he's only $2.75 million for a right shot defenseman, and he supposedly plays first pair minutes with Victor Hedman? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And for instance, people were giving credit again to the Predators on Twitter, these analytic hockey sites that Adam loves to use. They were sitting there and they were saying things like, hey, this is probably the exact right amount of money to give Nick Pervix. This is probably how much he's worth. Well, what I've learned about unrestricted free agency, really across all sports, but especially the NHL on July 1, if a guy's value, according to the analytics gurus, is $2.75 million, on July 1, that guy's going to sign for $6 million. Because how many times are there contracts that are signed that are, whoa? And finally, and Jake, stop me if I've already said this today, Nick Pervix does not pass the Mikael Granlund rule. Which means...
I was going to say, did you know who he was before this?
No clue. And it is a rule that I believe in, that if I do not know who somebody is, then I assume that they suck. I feel like I watch enough hockey. I don't watch every game. I'm sorry, I don't have League Pass. I also don't watch every playoff game. So if I've got something better to do, I am not going to watch a second round matchup between the LA Kings and the Winnipeg Jets. Sorry, busy. But I do feel like I watch enough hockey. I watch the Predators play pretty much every night. And on top of watching the Predators play, when it gets a little bit later in the playoffs, I watch that. So I feel like I should know most of the good players. So I've never heard of this Nick Pervix before. Never. So other than my pure skepticism, my pure ignorance on who this guy is, and then my skepticism of the position he plays, the age he is, and the money he's going to be paid, I have to think he stinks. Most notably because, again, a right shot defenseman who's any good probably goes for at least $4 million on an AAV. And this guy isn't even $4 million. This guy is $275 on a 2-year deal. Now, I get why he would do it, because the cap is going to explode. So the Florida Panthers, here's what I've realized the Florida Panthers have done. This is brilliant. They're not going to pay Brad Marchand for 6 years. He's not going to be on the team at 45 years old. That's not going to be the issue. What's going to happen is the Florida Panthers, they're going to buy out all these guys once they get too long in the tooth. And the cap will have exploded. So when you spread out the buyout money for all these guys, they'll be able to absorb it. Plus, they'll stink anyways. So they'll suck it up and deal with it. They are mortgaging the future for now, and I get it. And I understand why Pervix would go for a 2-year deal at $275 as opposed to wanting a more guaranteed 3-year, 4-year deal, because when the cap explodes, if this guy's any good, he goes back into free agency at 29 years old, and that $2.75 million will be $7 or $8 million. At least that's what they say it should be like. So I get it from his standpoint. And I get it from the Predators' standpoint too. I mean, the Predators, again, they're not trying to break the bank on any free agent signings. They've been there, done that. They did that last year. But I've never heard of this guy, which is usually a bad sign. Though for defensemen, they get a little bit of a pass because they don't score. So it's not like I watch them just kill the Predators goal after goal after goal. And he plays in Tampa. They don't play the Predators very often. But at the same time, if this guy is good, and like Adam said, if he's going to play on the right, if he's going to play on the right side and Yossi's going to play the left side, and that's going to be your top pair, and he's only making $2.75 million at 27 years old, holy crap, you got to steal. But in a league where everybody gets paid more money than they should on July 1, he only got $275. So somebody explain that one to me. That's all I ask. Other than that, I am not going to complain about a right shot D at $275. I mean, again, what I've learned about this league If you can flip Tanner Jeannot and get the haul that you got, you can flip anybody for anything, especially if they've got an expiring contract. And for this guy, if he's any good, then he'll be on the team next year. Hooray. And if not, you can flip him next year at the deadline and someone will take him the same way you traded a second-round pick for Jeremy Lauzon and the Winnipeg Jets traded a second-round pick for Luke Shen. So, again, that's my long-winded Nick Pervix take. Don't know who he is. Everything sounds good, but quite frankly, it sounds too good to be true. 615-737-1025 here on the program. We'll get to your phones. 615-737-1025. If people want to weigh in here, your thoughts on the Predators. And plus, there's another thing that I guess I'm starting to realize about the NHL. Let's hit that next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 again. you did a great job in the press conference. The question was asked about, are you going to fix the defense internally or externally? And you did a great job of not answering that question. I was very proud of you.
Yeah, well,
but I got to know, like, is it really going to be, Yossi and Justin Barron? Because I know you said Barron played better last year, but I don't know.
No, I think he will. I got to give the young man a chance. I think getting getting Lazan and maybe Yossi moving over to the right would be a possibility that we're looking at, and then finding a partner for Shea is sort of the goal. Get another right D. The whole league's looking for a right D. I moved some right D last year, but we also have some internal things that the Wilsbys of the world, and you don't want to hear that, but. I think if we can just tweak one more right side D, then we'll be in good shape.
Okay, there you go. That was Barry on our show last week. We now know the answer. That it's going to be Nick Pervix. So here's a discrepancy, because again, I'm trying to figure out, what am I missing here? $2.75 million for a right shot defenseman who just turned 27 years old. Shouldn't that be a $4 million player if Adam Vingan is going to do a cartwheel over them signing it? Shouldn't he be worth more in unrestricted free agency? And as I was doing a dive through the stats, here's the thing that's crazy. Nick Pervix last year for the Tampa Bay Lightning had an average ice time of 14 minutes and 41 seconds per game. That is as third pair as it gets. Think about some real crap bum Scarbinis the Predators have had. Justin Barron, again, that number is 1441. Justin Barron last year played 17 minutes a game. Wilsby, who Robbie Stanley apparently is in love with. Adam Wilsby played, again, the number is 14 plus for Pervix, let's say 15 minutes of ice time, 18 minutes of ice time a game last year. And then when I pulled up the Pervix stats, and I went into, okay, let's see, does he play on the power play? I assume that he does not play on the power play. He does not play on the power play. I'm fine with that. In 3 seasons, Nick Pervix has 1 shot on goal on the power play, which means he's never on the power play. Fine. I don't need him to be on the power play. Yossi is going to be on the power play. Brady Shea is going to be on the power play. Tanner Mullendijk is probably going to be on the power play. I don't need him driving the play. I don't need any of that. Short-handed. So as far as penalty killing is concerned, over 3 years, he's got 2 career hits on the penalty kill, according to hockeyreference.com. So he's got 1 shot on goal on the power play and 2 hits on the penalty kill, which means he never plays special teams. So if you're going to be kind of what it sounds like Barry wants, which is that right-handed partner for Brady Shea, you're going to have to play on the penalty kill. And then I looked at his time on ice in the Florida Panthers Tampa Bay series. They lost that series, by the way, in a gentleman's sweep, 5 games. They lost 4-1. And in that, 14 minutes in game 1 of ice time, 11 minutes in game 2 of ice time, 13 minutes of ice time in game 3, which they won 17 shifts, 21 shifts and 14 minutes in game 4. And in game 5, again, win or go home, his shifts went down from 23 and 21 in games 1 and game 4 to 15 shifts and 11 minutes of ice time. They don't play this guy. Now I figured out why he's available for $2.75 million. So he's a third pair guy. And just like with Nick Hague, they're going to hope that this third pair guy can play the second pair here. We shall see if you'll be able to do that. But the way everybody else was talking about him, Pred's Twitter and Adam, and the way they were talking about him, like it was like, man, they got a potential first pair defenseman for $2.75 million as a right-handed shot at 27 years old. And I'm like, wait a minute, that does not exist at $2.75 million at 27 years old in unrestricted free agency. Unless this guy lost an arm between the last game he played and today, that does not exist. Now to your phones. 615-737-1025. And your phone lines, as always on this program, are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And by the way, I want to say your phone lines. I heard Robbie call them his phone lines today. I said, damn, Robbie owns the phone lines now, which are presented by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Joel in Woodbury says, all this tells me with your talk about Nick Pervix is that you don't know hockey. So here's an example. The one right shot defenseman that was kind of on the free agent market that I knew wasn't going to break the bank or anything like that was Cody Ceci. Cody Ceci is always on the Edmonton Oilers or the Dallas Stars, and he ends up in the Cup final or the conference final pretty much every year. And so Vingan texted me and said, well, you liked Cody Ceci. Wait a minute. I didn't like Cody Ceci. Let me rephrase. He said, you know Cody Ceci. Would you rather have him at 4x4.5? Pervix was making 1.125 per season on his previous contract. Well, again, Cody Ceci, a name I know, and again, I don't think Cody Ceci's great. Cody Ceci plays 21 minutes a game of ice time. You see the difference? He plays 21 minutes. That is a more known commodity. As far as special teams are concerned, Cody Ceci plays on the penalty kill. Does not play on the penalty kill, or at least our Nick Pervix does not play on the penalty kill. So we'll have to see how he goes. But this idea of like, oh man, yeah, no, we'll see. And Joel says, this just says you don't know hockey. Again, I don't think you could do as much hockey talk as we do on the show if you don't know hockey. And what even defines knowing hockey anymore? Am I Adam or Robbie? No, I'm not. But I do enough of it. I think we can all argue that we do enough hockey on this show. One texter says, I love you, Jared, but if you didn't know who Granlund was before he came to the Predators, you don't watch that much hockey. That comes from Craig. Let me tell you something. I watch every Predators game. The Predators are in the same division as the Minnesota Wild. The Predators traded for Mikael Granlund. And I remember because they played the Pittsburgh Penguins like the day before the trade deadline. And Jason Zucker, of all people, who would later become a Predator, Jason Zucker scored in that game. And I was like, man, that's a guy who I'd like to have on the Predators. And the next day, the Predators acquired Mikael Granlund at the deadline. And they also acquired Wayne Simmons. Same day. I knew who Wayne Simmons was. They acquired Mikael Granlund. And I remember thinking, I don't even know who this is. I watched the Minnesota Wild game yesterday. I like Zucker. Who the hell's this? And everybody said, Jared, trust me. Trust me, he's good. I said, okay, they say he's good. And then outside of us, half of a COVID season for the Predators, Granlund was ass cheeks. ASSCHECKS. Ass cheeks. He was. So now I'm just done listening to everybody tell me guys I've never heard of aren't good because the Predators play a team like Minnesota 5 times a year. So at least I'd have seen him. If he was any good, I would have noticed him. Pervix is a little different because he plays in Tampa and they don't really, take those kind of players. But for whatever it is, you have to stick by the rule. And the rule is the Granlund rule. And at first, when they traded for Granlund, I was too ashamed of the hockey shamers out there to not say that I had any idea. I had no clue who this guy was. I was ashamed to do that. I didn't want you people to be like, Jared Stillman doesn't know hockey. He said he didn't know who Kyle Granlund is. And now, because I got duped by it, just like I got duped by Kyle Turris, I'm done getting duped. If I haven't heard of you, I watch enough hockey. You probably stink. Andrew says the Preds hoping that Nick Hague and Nick Pervix can be good defensemen, has Andre Dillard and Nicholas Petit-Frere energy written all over it. I'm not going to go that far, but it does sound like, yeah, this is a great discounted price, at least when it comes to Nick Hague, and I am not taking up for Nick Hague. Again, I don't know who he is either. Mikael Granlund rule says he stinks. I am not taking up for Nick Hague, but at least they paid him real money. Like, I mean, at least it's like, yeah, we think he's good, so we should pay him real money, which at least is, well, nobody else thinks he's good, but you think he's good, so you go ahead and take the money. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Neil says, everybody sucks, Jared. Is that a me thing? Or are you saying like, oh, everybody sucks to you, Jared? Or are you saying that everybody in free agency sucks? Because if Mikael Granlund is number 4 on the free agent hot board as he was this morning at The Athletic, then I'm just going to say everybody in free agency does stink. If that is the case, if that's the best you got in free agency, because think about all the guys that could have been free agents, but either got traded and signed somewhere else as part of the trade, like Marner or Rantanen, or how many guys just decided to stay where they were, even though, well, we didn't think we'd be able to keep them, but we did. The Florida Panthers kept their whole team, which, by the way, I need to correct something I said earlier. I said they were going to buy out all these contracts. Apparently, Brad Marchand cannot be bought out. I did not know this. According to the CBA, because Brad Marchand is over 35 with this signing, the entire cap hit has to be realized in the assigned year if they were to buy out Marchand. So he has to be on their team for the next 6 years, and he's 37. So they are expecting him to be a Florida Panther at 43 years old, which is crazy. 615-737-1025. More of your phones if you want to weigh in here on Free Agency Day. 615-737-1025. And for all the Jared doesn't know hockey people out there, there's one thing that I keep noticing with some of these other moves that are signed across the league. We'll hit on it next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
But Victor Arvidsson, who waived his no trade, going to Boston for a future mid-round draft pick. Look at the disappointment on Ty's face.
Why? Just why? Why? That's stupid. Oh my God. Take him to the cleaners, please. What's the point of having a veteran GM if he does everyone favors all the time? What is the point of that? What is the point? Corey Perry, who is forever years old. He's been around since the dawn of man. You just helped him out. You took on $4 million. Why? And why are you giving up a mid-round pick? Oh, that's so annoying. Stop GMing like it's your first month on the job. Like, I don't get that. You can find a Victor Arvidsson in free agency.
There you go. That was Ty Anderson on 98.5 The Sports Hub as the Bruins traded for Victor Arvidsson. And it's funny, I texted my buddy on that same station when the Bruins traded for Arvidsson, and I said, he sucks. And, I mean, look, Arvidsson was a good Predator, but he was toast 5 years ago. Like, his body, his little tiny body had given out. And apparently he's got to waive a no-trade clause, and they got to trade a pick to get Victor freaking Arvidsson, who had 27 points last year, playing on the same team as Connor McDavid. Give me a break. And I got to tell you, this free agent class is absolute horse crap when I see some of the guys that are signing today, because all the good players, Sam Bennett decided to re-sign, Mikko Rantanen got traded so that he could re-sign in Dallas, Aaron Ekblad re-signed, Brock Besser today re-signed, Mitch Marner sign and trade. So all the guys that are out there are all bums. Tanner Jeannot, bum. Thank goodness, what a great trade. Mikael Granlund, when he was on the Predators, bum. Like, if Michael Bunting was in free agency right now, he probably would have gotten $6 million, because all these guys in free agency are awful. This is a terrible free agent class. And I don't know if this is just how it's going to be, where there's not a franchise tag in the NHL, but teams are just so desperate not to lose their guys that they'll find a way to sign them, or that they'll make sure they get something in return for everybody or something. But woof. What a terrible, terrible, terrible. I mean, just terrible free agent class. Dylan and Antioch's all mad about my Mikael Granlund take. Mikael Granlund sucked when he was on the Predators. We could not believe when they got a second-round pick from Pittsburgh in exchange for him at the deadline 2 years ago. Says his point total from 2019 to 22 was 63, 56, 80, and 58. Philip Forsberg in those same years, 63, 39, 69, and 50. Absolute garbage take, Dylan and Antioch says. Granlund sucks. Sucks. Where was that caller last year or 2 years ago at the deadline that was like, they should trade a first-round pick for Mikael Granlund? If Granlund didn't suck, he wouldn't be going to his 9th team in the last 5 years. The Minnesota, then he was here, then he got shipped out to Pittsburgh, then he went to San Jose, then he went to Dallas, and now he's going to go to his 6th team. One texter says, I'm not arguing that Granlund was really a top-line guy, but ass cheeks, he was a regular contributor, no? Roughly 10 goals average a year in Nashville. 10 goals! Again, get over wanting Victor Arvidsson and Mikael Granlund and Craig Smith and these freaking bums. You can get those guys anywhere. That's why, again, this draft pick that they had was so important, was because this needs to be the kind of player, Brady Martin needs to be the kind of player that you can't just get anywhere. I think the Predators' dream when it comes to the defensive pairings of one day a top pair of Tanner Molendyk on the left side and Andrew Gibson on the right side. I think that's their dream. You have to hope that you can't just get that guy anywhere. Here's a guy who I think represents the kind of player that is a worthy addition that actually is a legit player. Ekholm. You cannot get Matthias Ekholm just out there in free agency. You cannot get that player. So if you want to get that player, you have to trade for him. And anybody better than Matthias Ekholm, you need to trade for. All these other guys with the Predators, I don't care what Granlund did in Dallas. Now, I do think it's worth discussing about guys leaving here and being Dante Fabro. And I do think it's worth discussing what Dante Fabro said and why Dante Fabro sucks so bad here and doesn't suck there. But enough with the Granlund stuff. First of all, there's some sort of isotope in the water in Dallas where a guy leaves the Nashville Predators, goes to the Dallas Stars, and is infinitely better the second he gets there. But God forbid we try to hire the coach that got that out of those guys that couldn't get that with guys that couldn't succeed here. Can't do that one, I guess. One texter says, so let me understand if I understand your Granlund theory correctly. This is not new. Again, in 2019, the Predators traded for Mikhail Granlund. I had never heard of Mikhail Granlund in my life. And I, on the radio, just ignored it and just said, oh, well, they all say he's good, so he must be good. Ryan Porth told me he's good. Jared, trust me, he's good. I'm like, okay, if you say he's good, he must be good. I'll hear you out on that. They traded for Kyle Turris the year before. Everyone told me, no, he's good. I never heard of him. I had heard of PK Subban. He actually was good. So everybody tells me Mikhail Granlund's good. Then I watch Mikhail Granlund, again, ass cheeks, when he was with the Predators. And so now if I don't know, I feel like I watch enough hockey that if I don't know who you are, then you stink. Because I do feel like I know enough regular players. In fact, should we do a who he play for later today in the program? Which is what they do on TNT with Charles Barkley at the beginning of the year. Guys move and they say, okay, who does so-and-so play for? Because I think I could probably get, if you gave me real players, no freaking bums, no fourth liners on the Utah Mammoth. But if you gave me like a legitimate, solid player, Vingan's tried to do this before. Last year he texted me and said, do you know who Sam Reinhart plays for? I said, yes, he plays for the Florida Panthers. And I know that because he's good. Jake, do you have a player off the top of your head you want to throw out there?
Give me 1 second. I will find a good one.
Okay, but it can't be some like fourth line Scarbini bum on some team that I'm never going to watch, like Montreal. It has to be like a legitimate top six forward or a legitimate top two pair defenseman. And so I'll give you the break to think about it. 615-737-1025 here on the program if you want to weigh in. By the way, I do remember reading something in The Athletic about how the Penguins general manager got fired over the Mikhail Granlund trade. So for all you boohoo Granlund crew out there, give me a break. So Jake will think of his guy, 615-737-1025, plus a philosophical question that I have about the Nashville Predators and where things are today. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 1025, 1063 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game National Studios, presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Boy, a lot of people are weighing in here on this Mikhail Granlund rule. Again, this is not new. I watch the Predators play pretty much every game. I would say I probably watch 70-plus games a season. And last season, I'd say I probably watched less because I was having a child, so I was a little busy. But also at the same time, the team stunk. But I watch about 70 Preds games a year. Plus, I do watch in and out the playoffs. So I feel like I should know enough of the good players. Like, I don't expect everybody when it comes to football to be glued to the TV from noon on Sunday. You know, I don't expect you to watch every second of every game on Sunday. But we all know who the good players are, right? That's how I am with hockey. So, by the way, Robbie Stanley texted me and asked me who Alex Tuck played for. If I knew, I said Vegas. Apparently, he used to play for Vegas. He plays for Buffalo now. But guess what? Good enough. I've heard of him. So if they were to acquire him, I'd say, okay, at least I've heard of him. So Jake has come up with a group of players. I have to guess who they play for. How about this? If I get who they play for now or who they used to play for, that counts good enough. Fair?
Fair enough. How many do you want?
How many do you have?
I've got 4 ready. Do you think that's ready? That is
okay,
good enough?
I think I will get 75% as far as this is concerned. So let's do all 4. Jake, without further ado, take it away.
All right, we got the Family Feud music in here. All right, the first contestant on who he play for, we're going to go Alex DeBrincat.
Alex DeBrincat. He was in Chicago, and then he got traded to Detroit. I'm going to say Detroit.
That is correct. 1 for 1.
All right, 1 for 1, baby. All right, number 2.
All right, 1 for 1. Your next is Cole Caulfield.
Cole Caulfield. I know that name. I know of that name. I'm thinking either Minnesota or Buffalo. I'm going to go Minnesota.
He plays for Montreal. Let me make sure that he didn't previously play for one of those.
I've heard of that name, but to act like I know all about Cole Caulfield, I don't. That one's out.
Yeah,
okay.
He is exclusively played for the Montreal Canadiens. So
37 goals last year. Good for him.
1 for 2. So you got to get these last 2 right. Your next is Andrei Svechnikov.
Svechnikov. Carolina.
That is correct.
Ding, ding,
2
ding,
for
ding,
3.
ding.
Adam Vingan helped me out with a couple of these. This one is from him, and you need this one to get 3 out of 4. Jake McCabe.
Holy crap, Jake McCabe. Toronto.
That is correct. 3
ding,
for 4.
Ding, ding. Okay, suck it. Okay, Adam Vingan and everybody else out there. Bang, bang, bang.
You killed it.
I will tell you. That was intense. Talk about fun that I have had on the radio. Oh man, I have a take that I want to get to on the Predator season, but let's just go to phones. 615-737-1025 here on the program. By the way, Chase has texted me, Chase McCabe, he's weighed in and says, so basically your definition of a role player is a bummer, they suck. You do realize that you have to have role players on a roster, right? Not everyone is going to be 80 or 90 points and score 40 goals. Granlund does not suck. Granlund sucks. What has happened here, I do not understand what has happened. What has happened here is this weird revisionist history because Granlund went to Dallas, and again, there's something in the water there. Like if Barry Bonds were on their team, I would think I know what's in the water there, but there's something in Dallas. Now, I'm not allowed to hire their coach apparently because he wins too much or something, but there's something about Dallas where these guys go there and they play infinitely better than they ever played here, just like Duchesne. But here's the thing. Again, I feel like I know most of the role players that matter in the NHL. And all the other role players in the NHL, and I said this at the time that the Predators chose to protect Tanner Jeannot over Calle Jarnkrok, and I said this because, again, now I didn't know that Tampa Bay was going to give up and move the farm in order to get Jeannot, which I think they should regret and probably do because he stinks. But I kept saying this, these bottom 6 guys that are on your 4th line, you can get a Cole Smith anywhere. You can get a Mark Jankowski anywhere. You can get those players anywhere. For me, if you want to be a different team than last year, it's not about calling some guy that might be a freaking 4th line guy here or should play in Milwaukee. I don't care about that. That's like Robbie Stanley trying to talk up Adam Wilsby to me. Wilsby's just a guy. He should be in Milwaukee or on the 3rd pair. That's what he is. Those guys do not change your season. If you get into the season and you need a 4th line grinder or you need an extra winger, you can go acquire one at the trade deadline with one of the 9 second-round picks you acquire every year. But if you're looking for like a real player who's going to make a difference on your team, those guys do not exist this year in free agency. And when Mikhail Granlund is up there, that tells me none of these guys are big-time difference makers. Let me ask you this. When Mikhail Granlund was on the Predators, did he make them any better? Like, were they a good team because they had Mikhail Granlund? No. When he went to San Jose, were they any good? No. He goes to Dallas. Were they good before he got there? Yes. Let's not act like he's Mikko Rantanen in Dallas. I mean, this one guy gave me all easy ones right here. This one guy in the text line says Logan Cooley, that's Utah. Anton Lundell, that's Florida. Matthew, I think it's Nyes, that's Toronto. Ivan Barbashev, that's Vegas. Matty Beniers, that's Seattle. Those are easy. Like, that one's easy. One texter says, easy, they only gave you mainstream guys. Adam Vingan came up with these. You can't get mad at me. How many did Adam come up with, Jake, and how many did you come up with?
I picked 2. He picked 2. Cole Caulfield was actually, that one was 50-50, me and Adam, so we can both take credit for that one.
Okay. Craig says, Jared, I can name hockey players, also has to be a top-line player. I can name any team he's ever played for. LOL. Again, why name the right guard of the Arizona Cardinals? Jake, give me the right guard for the Arizona Cardinals.
Is it Will Hernandez?
I guess. If you got that right, then you're a good football fan. You're a better football fan than me. Is it actually?
I'm checking.
I mean, if it is, hey, more power to you. Like, I
No,
will give.
it's Isaiah Adams. I could not have told you that in a
Jake,
million years.
You don't like football. Nope, not a football fan. Wasn't Will Hernandez on the Giants?
He was, but I think he signed with the Cardinals at some point.
So, again, like, just because I don't watch every hockey game on League Pass and I don't spell favorite with a U does not mean that I don't know this league. And I know Granlund. And so my thing is, when it comes to the Predators, when you sign guys that aren't good, I'm like, I hate to say it, but like, when you sign a guy I've never heard of, he's probably not good. If I can tell you who Jake McCabe is. 615-737-1025. Okay, so there's a big question that I kind of need the answer to when it comes to the Predators, and I don't feel like the Predators actually have the answer. We'll get to that coming up next. 615-737-1025. That's our phone number. Stillman and Company. What a fun day so far. 1025, 106 for the game. what reassurances did you have that he didn't lose the room? Because if I know you well enough, I know that even if you like a coach, if he loses the room, he's got to go, right? Like that's just how hockey is.
I'm a big believer. Like once the players turn on you, they just turn on you, or they don't listen. So everybody I talk to, and especially your top players, because that moves the needle for you. They said, we like Andrew. We love Andrew, playing for Andrew. We had a rotten year, didn't go our way. And they said, if we just did this or this, I think we could come back and do a real good job. So it wasn't necessarily about the coach. It was about a little bit of themselves, a little bit of, the things that they can do within the, be it the system, the little things that they can do in terms of getting off to a better start so we can get and be more productive. And Andrew is an open book. The great thing about Andrew is that he listens. And it's coaches that don't listen, you're going to lose them. You're going to lose the room. But if you listen, I made a lot of mistakes as a coach, but it came from the heart. And players knew that, and they knew that I would listen. And I think that's a quality that Andrew has. And Andrew listened, and he's going to make some tweaks, and he's going to challenge some guys to play a little differently if they have to. But he's going to listen, which is a really good trait as a coach, because if you're stuck in your ways and it doesn't change, then you're gonna lose the room. And I don't believe he did that.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz on our show talking about the coach with Andrew Burnett. So here's a question I have for the Predators, and a question I have for everybody out there, including me and all of us. So I'm going to use the we when it comes to this. So do we think that we know why the Predators know what happened last year? I mean, this is July 1st. This time last year, on July 1, the Predators signed Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, and Brady Shea. Now, I was not talking about winning the cup, but I was talking about getting to the second round of the playoffs. And I believe if you get to the second round of the playoffs, and if you have a competitive series, sometimes you squeak by, a team that's not very good, and you get to the second round of the playoffs and you get gentlemen swept. That happens. But I mean, I'm talking about really having a tooth and nail second round series. Once you get there, I mean, you're a cup competitor. I keep going back to Toronto where Adam Vingan was like, you can't say the Maple Leafs shouldn't tear it down. The Maple Leafs don't get past the second round. Like, they went to 7 games with Florida. They're good. But I keep going back to last year. This time last year, July 1, the Predators were the team of the offseason. And they weren't just the team of the offseason, but they were the team that people said, hey, this team's legit now. They made the playoffs last year. Yossi, Forsberg, Saros, add in Stamkos, Marchessault, Brady Shea. This team is legit. This coach has been a head coach for 2 years. He's been a Jack Adams finalist twice. This team is good. They exceeded expectations last year, and now they've loaded up. And yet, from the second they dropped the puck last year, this team sucked. They lost. And so this is combining their regulation losses with their overtime and shootout losses. But they lost 52 times last year. They had 68 points, and they finished in 7th place. And yet, when it comes to what happened last year and how to fix it going forward, and they say they want to be good this year, I keep wondering, so do we know what happened last year? For instance, let's start with the coach. At any point last season, did it feel like the coach had the answer as far as this group of players was concerned? I would say no. And yet at the same time, Barry Trotz, he's sticking his neck out there for Andrew Burnett. Talking about, I made mistakes when I was a young coach, and I gave Andrew Burnett a lot of work over the offseason, and they had projects, and they worked on them, and, he's a good coach. And, these guys, when I met with him, he didn't lose the room, and yet he couldn't get through to them. But now we think that he's going to be able to get through to them this year? So when you don't fire the coach, you're saying the coach is not the problem. Now, if it were to come to an official Predators discussion i.e. a press conference, Barry on the show, Andrew Burnett, they'd say, well, we all are part of the problem. But let's put that to the side. Let's put the PR statements off over there, and let's just be real. If you're not firing the coach, as Barry said, if I thought he'd lost the room, he'd have fired him. That's pretty much what he said, right? He goes, once they stop listening, you can't coach him anymore. So he doesn't think that he lost the room. The second part then has to be the players. Because if it's not the coach, then it's the players. And I thought about all the guys that were on the opening night roster from last year that are no longer on this team or in this organization. Is it really Colton Sisson's fault that this team wasn't good last year? Was it really Jeremy Lauzon's fault? Yuso Parson and Phil Tomasino, Tommy Novak, Luke Shin, Alexander Carrier, Dante Fabro, Scott Wedgwood? Is it really their fault that the Predators weren't good last year? Now, Novak had no business being the second line center next to Steven Stamkos, and that was a massive mistake that they made that I fear they're about to make again. But for the most part, to Chase's point, those guys are all role players. Again, you can go get a Colton Sissons. That's why I'm not shedding any tears over them moving on from him, because even though he stands for what sounds like all the right things, seems like in my dealings with him, a very good guy, and he's a versatile player, and he's a hard worker, and he shows up to the rink every night, you can replace him. Lauzon, you can replace him. Parsonen, you can replace him. Luke Shin, again, you can replace him. But the guys that you can't replace, Yossi, Forsberg, Marchessault, Brady Shea, those guys are still on the team. So what was the problem last year? Because this team was not a 68-point team on paper. And yet that's exactly what they were during the season. And at no point during last year did it feel like they had the answers to get themselves out of this. They started off 0-5. And when they started off 0-5, Adam Vingan kept saying, no team has ever started off 0-5 and made the playoffs ever. And I was like, okay, well, let's see. This team should make the playoffs. This team has what I think are the players good enough to make the playoffs. Trotz came on the show. He knew the exact same stat that Vingan had thrown around. He said, hey, we think we're going to get this thing right back on the train tracks. They beat Boston at home, and then they went and they beat Columbus and Chicago, and they were 3-5. And I thought to myself, you know what? They're going to be fine. Because they'll lose a game, and then they'll win 2 in a row, and then they'll lose a game, and then they'll win 3 in a row, and then they'll be right back on the train tracks, and by around Thanksgiving, they'll probably be hovering the 500 mark, maybe a little bit better, maybe a little bit worse, and then they'll catch a heater, and after that, they'll be in the playoffs. And in February and March, we'll be talking about trying to add a second-line center or something like that. And the exact opposite happened. They got to 3-5, and then, boom, the bottom fell out again. And not only did the bottom fall out, but we're talking about uncompetitive games. Right around the election, they went to Washington and Florida and got their asses absolutely handed to them. I remember listening to Max call a game. I want to say it was part of a back-to-back maybe. And it was, they were playing the Florida Panthers. I think right after they played Washington, they had gotten beat by Washington. It was a close game. It was a tough game. It was a tough loss. They play Florida, and I get in the car. Lindsay and I were meeting with our pediatrician before our son was even born. And I remember we got back in the car, and I just hear, and Max goes, and it's 3-0 Florida. And I'm like, I look at the clock. I'm like, the game just started. What? And it was like that all year. They had an 8-game losing streak in December. They had a lead on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. They had a lead with like a minute to go, and the terrible Flyers ended up scoring, I believe, an empty netter, and then won the game in overtime. They had a stretch where I told Adam Vingan, look, I'm not on board with firing the coach, but if they don't take 2 out of 3 on this Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa trip, then the coach got to go, and they lost all 3. And so at no point last year did they ever have it figured out. And at no point last year did it look like Forsberg was heating up? Yossi was doing his Norris Trophy type stuff. Brady Shea got better as the year went on. Either that or the rest of the defense was just so bad that it overshadowed him. And Marchessault scored some goals here and there, and Stamkos, had to move to center. But it wasn't like I ever felt like they had the answers last season. And don't even get me started on the goalie, whose no trade clause, no movement clause kicks in today. So that's the one thing I keep coming back to when it goes to the Predators and it goes to Trotz and it goes, okay, we're going to try to be good this year and we're going to try to get this figured out and we're going to try to, and I'm like, do we know what went wrong last year? Like, do we know why these guys that were so celebrated on July 1st last year, coming off 40 goal seasons? Again, it wasn't that Vegas didn't want to re-sign Jonathan Marchessault. It's that Vegas didn't want to give him 5 years or whatever it was. So what happened last year? And I keep looking for the answer. And I just feel like the Predators just kind of shrugged their shoulders and are like, well, we'll see if it was the coach last year. Do you know what happened? 615-737-1025 is the phone number, 615-737-1025. We do, by the way, have a signing. We got a signing I want to talk about. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 615-737-1025, and your phones, 1025, 106 for the game.
Nick Pervix is a 27-year-old defenseman who has spent the past 3 seasons with the Tampa Bay Lightning. He was a late bloomer. He was a 6th-round pick in 2017, but he did not debut with the Tampa Bay Lightning until 2022. So in his 3 seasons in Tampa Bay, he played 69 games, 77 games, and 74 games. He's a right-handed defenseman.
Finally.
Hallelujah. If you're a Predators fan, he is a right-handed defenseman. He played a mostly third pairing role for the Lightning last season. But unlike Nick Hague, Nick Pervix 2 seasons ago was Victor Hedman's number 1 defensive partner. Victor Hedman, future Hall of Fame defenseman, number 1 defenseman for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Nick Pervix has experience playing with a top defenseman. So I could easily see Nick Pervix playing with Roman Josi on the top pair. I really like this signing. I think Nick Pervix fills an absolute need.
There you go. That was Adam thinking today on the Predators' new signing of Nick Pervix. Again, a right shot defenseman for $2.75 million AAV on a 2-year term. Again, I don't have a problem with it. The problem is the guy never plays. As far as the big moments are concerned in Tampa Bay, guy was playing like 11 minutes of ice time in the playoffs. So you're taking a third pair defenseman in Tampa Bay. You're going to stick him on the first or second pair here, and we shall see if that works one way or another. The one thing that the one test that Nick Pervix does not pass is what I call the Mikael Granlund test, or the Mikael Granlund test. As I've said many times, when the Predators acquired Mikael Granlund from Minnesota in 2019, I had never heard of him. I went with the flow. Ryan Porth said he was good. The Preds said he was good. People said he was good. Even though I felt like I watched enough Minnesota Wild hockey to know who was good and who was not, I thought, well, maybe he's good and I'm just not this big hockey savant. And instead, I realized, no, he sucks. Mikael Granlund is off the board in this horrendous day of free agency. Again, horrendous in terms of who's out there to sign. With Mikael Granlund at number 4 on the list, that told me that nobody that was out there was probably any good. Mikael Granlund off the board, 3 years, $7 million for Mikael Granlund in Anaheim. Now, I can't remember the last time Anaheim was any good, but if Trevor Zegras wasn't good for Anaheim, they think Mikael Granlund at $7 million is going to be much better? But here's the one thing we'll say. As far as Granlund is concerned, Granlund with the Predators was about 0.6 of a point per game, which is not very good. He's about 0.8 of a point, or 0.8 points per game with San Jose and Dallas, which is much better than he was with the Predators. And when you look at the raw numbers, that's where it's really crazy. For instance, with the Predators, Granlund, 162 points in 268 games. Granlund with San Jose, 105 points in 121 games. Granlund in Dallas, 21 points in 31 games. Again, that's much better than 162 in 268. I'll give Granlund credit. In 18 games in the playoffs, he did have 10 points. But, I wouldn't pay $7 million a year for Mikael Granlund, which is just unbelievable. Back to your phones, 615-737-1025 here on the program. Brian texts in and says, I keep hearing the Predators talk about the 0-5 start and how that messed up the whole season. I'm sorry, but if you can't overcome that, something is definitely wrong in a season as long as the NHL is. So the 0-5 start, and I forget what Adam Vingan's stats were at the time in November of last year, but 0-5 is you do not make the playoffs if you start 0-5. It's like you got to pick up one along the way. I would agree. I mean, I thought, again, when they started off 0-5 and then they won 3 in a row and they got to 3-5, I thought, okay, they'll be fine. Am I going to love that? Probably not, but they'll be okay. They'll be fine. They'll get it figured out. They've got a good coach. They've got good veteran players. They'll be fine. Even if I don't love the goalie, and You know that I do not love the goalie. They'll be fine. And then it was like one minefield after another. And then by the end of the year, in fairness to the coach and everybody else, at the end of the year, they were putting some of these freaking terrible players out there. Like Barron and number 8. Uckland or whatever it was, he was awful too. One texter says, everybody sucks to you, Jared. All 3 players that you're talking about, whether it's Mikhail Granlund, Victor Arvidsson, or Tanner Jeannot, were on teams with different systems. They were also on those teams for years. You can't expect players. Oh, I think he's talking about these players. All 3 players this year, Marchessault, Brady Shea, and Steven Stamkos, were on teams with different systems. They were also on those teams for years. You can't expect players to come to a new team and expect them to get right away. Well, first of all, Brad Marchand never had a problem with Paul Maurice's system after being dealt at the deadline, and he had been nowhere but Boston as far as his career was concerned. So you kind of lose me on that one. The other thing about the system stuff is if they had been bad for the first month and then they got it figured out, that would be one thing. But it wasn't like Steven Stamkos caught fire halfway through the season because, okay, I got the system down. Now, when Andrew Burnett took over as coach for about the first month and a half, Roman Josi looked like absolute dog crap. And it's hilarious because I said it, and Willie and Chris Mason were, how dare you? That's not true. Roman Josi is not absolute dog crap right now. We had Barry Trotz. I said, Barry, what's wrong with Roman Josi? Oh, no, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. And then midway through the season, Josi went back to the Norris Trophy level Josi. And everybody was like, I thought you said Josi sucked this year. I go, he did suck. And then he stopped sucking. And then last year when Brady Shea sucked at the beginning of the year, everybody kept saying, well, remember, Josi really struggled at the beginning of last year. I'm like, no, you people told me Josi didn't stink at the beginning of last year, and I was making it up. But I do think there's something to that. The question is, okay, well, now that they're in the new system, they've been in it for a year, will what you get out of Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault be what you were supposed to get out of Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault last year? And I don't know if that's the case. Jeff says, Haig and Pervix are big, steady defensemen, something the Preds absolutely need. Granlund represents what has always been wrong with the Predators' offense. Two-way players that turn into defense-first players. They don't stink as bad as the ideology that puts them in that situation. The one problem I have with that is Laviolette, it was not ever a defensive-first coach. And he played for Laviolette. And he struggled under Laviolette. Now, that may be something to do with the system and him struggling. But Granlund did struggle under Laviolette. And Laviolette, again, was not a defensive-first coach. Trotz, defensive-first hockey. Hines, again, we want to play the whole ice. You know, we want to forecheck all day. We want to hold those things, which is why Hines never wins in the playoffs, because that style of hockey does not work in the playoffs. But Hines, yes, defensive hockey. And Burnett never coached Granlund, so I can't take anything there. Wes says, why do you make it seem like Adam has a severe sinus infection every time you mimic him? I mean, that's my Adam Vingan impersonation. According to my analytics, the Predators signed Nick Pervix for $2.75 million per season, and my analytics calculate to $2.83 million per season, which is right in line. Does that not sound like Adam? Am I just missing a little bit? One texter says, I did not like hearing Trotz say it didn't go our way, as if the whole season is just a game of chance. I like Trotz, but that seems like flimsy accountability. You know, somebody said something to me last week, and I had totally forgotten about this. And in hindsight, I mean, Jake, you know when you hammer somebody and people will say that's unfair?
Yeah.
So I feel like that I didn't hammer Barry Trotz over this was actually unfair, because I totally forgot about this. And I guess because it was the middle of football season, maybe. I mean, look, no excuses. I don't let the players make excuses. I should not make an excuse for myself. So I don't know, again, if it was football season or if there were other issues at play here. But if you remember at the beginning of the year last year, Barry Trotz, when we were talking about what in the hell is going on with this hockey team. And one of the things Barry Trotz talked about was, well, these guys have just moved to Nashville, and at the beginning of the season, we have a bunch of home games, and these guys have a bunch of guys that are their family members are coming in from out of town and staying at their houses. And somebody said to me last week, they go, I cannot believe you did not rake Trotz over the coals for that. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so true. And it wasn't that I didn't mean to. It's, I guess it just completely slipped my mind. But Barry Trotz did come on this show last year and did try to argue, well, you know, the guys, they got people coming over and staying at their houses, and we need to get on the road and have a road trip, and we need to. Dude, these are professional hockey players. I don't want to hear they got too many people spending the night at their house. I mean, give me a break. JC says, so you wanted a bad season and a high draft pick, and now you're crying about how bad the players were on the ice. Make up your mind. I don't want a high draft choice next year. When I realized this previous season was completely lost, and boy, it was lost. When I realized it was completely lost, then I said, all right, embrace the tank and stink. Lose, do not win, do not. And they got the 5th pick. They got Brady Martin. One texter says, Jared is always mean to Adam. That's not fair. I love Adam. Besides, I think Adam knows I've always been in his corner. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025, here on the program, if you want to weigh in here on the show. Coming up next, if you think that people here were upset about the Brady Martin pick, the guy everybody here wanted, you should hear how the people that got him are reacting. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 615-737-1025. I am a man of my word, Jake, because yesterday I actually did eat at Tzatziki's last night. This week's Nationals best deal is Tzatziki's. Craving something fresh and flavorful? Tzatziki's has you covered, from juicy chicken kebabs to perfectly grilled salmon. Every bite is bursting with Mediterranean goodness. And don't even get us started on the homemade sauces and dressings. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at thegamenational.com/deals. Also, tune into ESPN 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Sounds take on Memphis. Pregame at 6:20, first pitch at 6:35. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at thegamenational.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and by Family Leisure.
The Predators pick is in at 5th overall.
Oh my God, here we go.
Here's Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Here we go.
Nashville Predators, one of Smashville's all-time greats, and a 2024 inductee into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I give you Shea Weber.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here making the Nashville Predators first selection. What a big day for these young athletes. Just the start's beginning for them. So, I mean, there's a journey ahead of you, and I want to wish you guys all the best of luck. I want to say hi to all the fans at Bridgestone. I know you guys probably aren't having any fun. I miss you guys. What a place to play. With that, with the 5th overall selection, the Nashville Predators in the 2025 NHL entry draft select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Brady Martin.
Brady Martin is the Predators pick at 5th overall. Not one of the two who we expected, but one of the top players in the draft. He was ranked as the number 11 North American skater, but he's been ranked higher than that, and he was a player that was heavily rumored to go 4th overall to Utah. So Brady Martin from the Sioux, who is not at the draft because he is on his farm in Ontario, too busy choring to be there. The good Canadian boy, Brady Martin, is your newest Pred.
This guy is a savage. He's if you want to.
It's one of your guys too, Mace. Mace was talking about him. He was all fired up about him.
Yeah, but he's a guy that's if you want to talk about guys that's like a cut in the mold of a Kachuk, Brady or Matthew. He's got skill. He's more of a straight line player, I would say, than a creator. The guy hits everything that moves, and he's an absolute savage. You know, again, we're talking, it's tough to pass up a James Higgins type of a skill set, but you're getting a different kind of element to the game. The guy can score. He's not, I wouldn't say the biggest playmaker or creator or driver, but he's a guy, he's going to get things done. So this is the identity I think the Predators wanted to go for.
There you go. That was Chris Mason. He loves the pick, James Higgins. Brady Martin, not James Higgins. Most people wanted James Higgins. So this has just been brought to my attention. I didn't even know this. Barry Trotz has a press conference coming up at 4:00. I do not think that will be live streamed. I do not think that is something that we can get our hands on. But I am kind of fascinated by what Barry Trotz is going to say. And this would be my number one question when it comes to Trotz. And this press conference that, again, the Predators put out around 2:15 that they were going to have this 4:00 press conference. And again, I can't just leave the studio to go run the press conference. But the one thing that I do wonder is this when it comes to the Predators and what Barry Trotz is going to say. Number one, are they done with Pervix? Is that the one signing and now they're done? And number two, and more importantly, what are they going to do about a second line center? And I know Barry said on the program last week that he wanted Fedor Svechkov in that spot at some point during the season. I think the exact line, or I'm paraphrasing it, but the line was, I want to get him ready to be the number 2 center, at least by some point in the season. And the reason I ask this question is because that was one of the big mistakes they made last year. They signed Tommy Novak to the extension. I didn't think it was a bad extension, 3.5 over 3 years, given the fact that Novak still wasn't totally proven, but had shown a little something. And so they extend Novak. But in the playoffs, when the boys got big, Tommy Novak did nothing. I mean, he was just nothing in that playoff series. And so they signed Stamkos and Marchessault, and they say, we're going to give the first crack at the second line center position to Tommy Novak. And I was thinking, do you have an insurance policy? If that doesn't work, is there a second option? And the answer was no. With Fedor Svechkov, he had 17 points last season across 52 games. I don't know if Fedor Svechkov's ready to be on the same line with Steven Stamkos. And if you want Steven Stamkos to be Steven Stamkos, you got to give him a little help. And I don't want to see Stamkos at center next year. And I'm not sure Eric Holla is good enough. So is there kind of a backup insurance policy plan of if Svechkov can't do it, then this is who we're going to put out there. I also do wonder what he'll say about the defensive pairings. My guess will be that Pervix, who they signed today, again, I'm fine with the contract. He's a third pair defenseman in Tampa Bay, but he'll be relied on more here. They'll give him a chance. We'll see. I assume Pervix will go with Brady Shea, and Barry will say that. And then I assume that they're going to probably put Justin Barron with Roman Josi, even though Barron's awful. And then Haig with whom? But what I think they could do, because I don't want to see Justin Barron play, I do wonder where Barry Trotz is on this idea of playing Andrew Gibson on that third pair. Gibson and Mullendijk come up together on the third pair. Mullendijk on the left, Gibson on the right. Haig on the left, Josi on the right. Shea on the left, Pervix on the right. What do you think? The other thing that I guess I do kind of wonder is right now is Brady Martin penciled in as the number 2 center for this team. Is that on the table? Or is he for sure going back to juniors or going to Milwaukee or whatever? So we will see what Barry Trotz has to say. We'll keep you updated on all of that. Again, I didn't know when we started the show that there was going to be a 4:00 press conference. So we'll see if anything shakes free. And I do wonder, does that mean that they're done in free agency for Trotz to have a 4 p.m. press conference on the opening day of free agency? We shall see. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number on the program. 615-737-1025. I do have a football topic today that I want to get to. I feel validated. I feel vindicated. And I feel like everybody can say, Jared, you were right about one specific thing in the NFL. Because I think even the people that have skin in the game are admitting, Jared, you were right. We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. Be caller 5 at 615-737-1025. And you will win a pair of tickets to see Live plus Collective Soul at First Bank Amphitheater on Sunday, August 10th. Good luck there. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Trevor Matich in less than 30 minutes. So, by the way, welcome to July. The month of football season starts, and there is football this month because on July 31st, so 30 days from now, it's the Hall of Fame game, for whatever that's worth. So, yesterday, we had a blockbuster of a trade, at least in terms of names, but also in terms of salaries. Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith go to the Steelers. Mika Fitzpatrick goes back to the Dolphins. Again, the sentiment was that the Steelers kind of wanted to move off of Fitzpatrick more so than give up a draft pick. So that's why Fitzpatrick went back to the Dolphins. And when I saw that trade, I love that trade for two reasons. Number one, the Steelers had been becoming very hard to watch on national TV. You know, forget about the teams nobody puts on national TV like the Panthers or the Falcons or the Saints or the Titans. Forget about them because they're never on national TV anyways. But the teams that get put on national television, there's always a handful that get put on a lot that I'm like, oh, God. The Chicago Bears are such a bore to watch when it comes to prime time. Until Jaden Daniels showed up, the Commanders were painful to watch when they were put into prime time, which they were because they played in the NFC East and it's a large market. And then there was the Steelers. For a while, the Steelers were very fun to watch. Ben and Brown and Bell and all those guys. Well, now they're all gone. And so watching Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett and Mason Rudolph and Russell Wilson and everything, it was just it was boring. Every time the Steelers played, it was boring. It felt like every time they played in primetime last year, they lost. So at least they're not going to be boring with Aaron Rodgers and Jalen Ramsey and DK Metcalf and Jonnu Smith, and they won't be boring anymore. So that's the first thing. The second thing is this. I felt so validated and so vindicated yesterday by the Dolphins' decision to basically send Jonnu Smith away for nothing. Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey, again, that's a salary dump. Pittsburgh is going to pay Jonnu $12 million, and they're going to pay Ramsey something like $20 million, and they're going to take on Fitzpatrick's salary to help kind of balance out the scale. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Because what the Miami Dolphins have done this year is they've walked back everything that they can that they've done over the last couple of years. Yeah, they haven't moved on from Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle, but that's probably because right now, given the guaranteed money, they probably can't, especially with Tyreek. But Teron Armstead, their left tackle, retired. Jalen Ramsey, star corner, goodbye. Jonnu Smith, 900 receiving yards last year. See ya. This team's got no offensive line. And they're not trying this year. They're tanking. The Dolphins, for the second time in 6 years, have decided to wave the white flag. They have decided to tank. And do you remember what the Miami Dolphins did last time? What led them to that belief of, okay, it's time to tear it all down? When they decided to move on from Jarvis Landry, who they let walk in free agency, Laramie Tunsil, whom they traded to the Texans, Mika Fitzpatrick, who they traded to the Steelers. They realized they had reached their peak with Ryan Tannehill as their quarterback, and they felt like it's time to tear it down and tank for Tua. The problem was the Dolphins, even though they were tanking, their head coach would not oblige, and it is well documented, by the way, that they were tanking. Their head coach and veteran quarterback, their bridge QB, Ryan Fitzpatrick, did not oblige. They won too many games. They ended up with the 5th pick. Now, good news that Tua, for them, got injured so they could pick him at 5. They really wanted Joe Burrow, but Cincinnati said no. So they took Tua. They brought him along slowly that first year, and then they pull him out, and they put in Fitzpatrick. And then the second year, he was the starter, but he wasn't very good. Then they got him Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. And Mike McDaniel was hired as the head coach. And all of a sudden, Tua's stats in games that nobody watched took off. Noon kickoff on CBS against the lowly Bill Belichick Patriots there at the end, Tua would light it up. The Jets, Tua 30-0. But every time they'd play a good team, they would get their ass kicked. And Tua would stink. Tua is awful in prime time. You thought Sam Darnold had a bad playoff game? Go look at Tua's stats against the Chiefs 2 years ago. This time last year, the Miami Dolphins decided to pay Tua Tagovailoa $167 guaranteed million. This year, they owe him $51 million in cash. And yet, the Dolphins are waving the white flag. Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer, the general manager, are on the hot seat, and they're probably both going to be fired at the end of the year. And Miami will then probably try to either move on from Tua or have a team around Tua outside of Jalen Waddle and Jalen Phillips that is so bad that they will then again try to pick number one so they can draft Arch Manning or somebody like that in the draft. And again, I feel so validated and so vindicated. And here's why. Because while I understand that the going rate for a starting quarterback in the NFL starts at $40 to $45 million a year, I knew that Tua was never worth it. I knew that. I knew that there was no need to pay that kind of money for that player. And I said when it came contract time and every quarterback was signing for 40, 45, 46, 48, 51, 53 million dollars a year, I said, I'm not doing that with Tua. If I own the Dolphins, I'd say to Tua, 25 million, take it or leave it. Because Tua is not some bum. He's not Tim Boyle. But I said $25 million, take it or leave it. And Tua's agents would have been offended. They would have said, you got to pay me more than that. I mean, Kyler Murray is getting 46. Yeah, well, his team's stupid. I'm not doing what he's doing. 25 million, take it or leave it. And the reason I said that was because if you don't want it, I'll just go sign Sam Darnold. Because I can go get Sam Darnold for probably around $25 million. And at the time, Sam Darnold did not have the season that he had in Minnesota last year. But I knew that Sam Darnold was better than Tua. But Tua was throwing for 500 yards a game, playing on CBS with Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta calling the game, only to go out there and look like a total pumpkin on Sunday Night Football. And so people said, that's crazy, Jared. Tua doesn't suck. Tua throws for 500 a game. Tua is so good. Tua. And they gave Tua a $53 million a year contract last year. They guaranteed $167 million. And here we are 1 year later. And the Dolphins are saying, yeah, we screwed that up. Yeah, we tanked for Tua, and Tua's an average quarterback. So you've got to pay Tua less money than you would pay an elite quarterback or even a really good quarterback, because Tua does absolutely zero elevating of the players around him. Again, I think you can go put Mac Jones back there and you're going to get a similar result. And I can get Mac Jones for less than $25 million. And I can put a better team around him. Because once again, I'm not paying the quarterback $51 million. And Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, is an old pawpaw. I mean, he is old. And yet the fact that a year after spending all that money on Tua, he's ready to wave the white flag on this season. He's ready to tear it down. He's ready to tank again the same way he tanked 6 years ago. That, to me, is so validating. The vindication for all the boo-hooers out there about Tua. Oh, Jared, you don't understand. Watch Tua play a primetime game. It's a disaster. I can go get a Geno Smith or a Sam Darnold in every offseason. You could have gotten Daniel Jones this year. I think he's making $10 million. Again, Tua is that kind of player. And most of you argued, complained, and cried and moaned about Jared. He's not fair to Tua. Tua's good, Jared. You'll see. And now even the guy paying him $53 million a year knows he ain't that good. He's not that guy. I don't love Trevor Lawrence. I don't love Dak Prescott. I don't know if you can win the Super Bowl with either guy. But I would have paid either guy. Because when it comes to either guy, Trevor or Dak, you can't get Sam Darnold in there to do what Dak does. But you can when it comes to Tua. And that's the difference. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number if you want to weigh in on that. That's on the table. Again, thank you, Miami, for admitting what I've known for a while, which is that Tua secretly stinks. 615-737-1025 here on Stillman and Company. Plus, we'll take a look at what Barry Trotz had to say. Plus, a move I was actually kind of surprised by today. I was like, yeah. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 1025, 106 for the game.
huge news early. Jalen Ramsey's now a Pittsburgh Steeler. Wow. Jonnu Smith, also a Pittsburgh Steeler. Minka Fitzpatrick, no longer a Steeler. He's once again a Miami Dolphin, alongside a couple late round draft swaps almost between the Steelers and the Dolphins. Huge news this morning. Jalen Ramsey being traded had been a conversation that's been taking place for like a month now. Had a big price tag, like $24 million or something along those lines. Who was going to pay? Who was going to make the trade? Who was going to have Jalen Ramsey on their team? At the age of 30, still in the middle of his prime, 9-year NFL vet Darius J. Butler. Do we agree?
Very much so. Very much in his prime. Just got re-upped, a couple years ago, so hate to see him leaving the Dolphins, obviously.
A lot of people, obviously, Darius Butler, massive Dolphins fan,
Huge.
South Florida boy, but he has picked up some other teams as well because the Miami Dolphins have not had much success. Now, when they bring Jalen in, they bring Tyreek in, obviously they draft Tua, they start spending all their resources on trying to win in a big way, and now it basically everybody's gone. Ramsey was supposed to go back maybe to L.A. to be on the Rams. Then the Steelers conversation started to kind of chime in. Now we know Jalen is a Pittsburgh Steeler. Minka Fitzpatrick is now a Miami Dolphin. And Jonnu Smith, who's a tight end for the Miami Dolphins, that was allegedly being shopped to the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last few weeks. But was he just trying to get a deal done?
There you go. That was McAfee yesterday. And then there was the surprise news. There was a lot of chatter last night that the Dolphins were going to be looking for a tight end. And I saw some Titan fans saying, well, could the Dolphins be interested in Chig? And let me just say this. If the Miami Dolphins wanted Chig Okonkwo, I would go get my car, put Chig in it, and drive him all the way down to Florida. Give me a 4th rounder, a 3rd rounder, something like that, and you can have Chig Okonkwo on the last year of his deal. But then today the news came out that Darren Waller, who last played for the New York Giants in 2023 and then decided to retire to go be a rapper and is 32 years old, is now going to come out of retirement, and the Dolphins are going to pay him $5 million to be their starting tight end. Now, at one point in time, Darren Waller was actually kind of good, I think. But then after that, he completely fell off. In 2019, Darren Waller had 1,100 yards. The next year in 2020, he had 1,100 yards and 9 touchdowns. And ever since that, 55 and 665, 28 and 388, 52 and 552. Again, those are like Chig stats. And they're paying him $5 million at 33 years old? What are they doing? And I think that his agent is Drew Rosenhaus. And so I'm kind of wondering if this is like a local favor with the Dolphins and Darren Waller. But Darren Waller stinks. I mean, Darren Waller is awful. He was last good in 2020. That was 5 years ago. He didn't play. So I am absolutely shocked. When I heard they were looking at the tight end market, I knew they weren't interested in Mark Andrews because Mark Andrews makes $11 million and they're not interested in paying $11 million for a tight end. But I figured there might be somebody out there they were looking at. They're not looking at Chick. But then they signed or they traded for however you want to couch it, Darren Waller? Talk about a total tank job by the Dolphins. And this Darren Waller move is the perfect move to say we're not tanking, but actually saying that we're tanking. Same with taking on Minka Fitzpatrick, who, if you look at the PFF stats, Minka Fitzpatrick regressed significantly last year. And I heard a Steeler beat writer on the McAfee show who said the Steelers were not going to re-sign Minka Fitzpatrick after this year. So they wanted to get rid of the money, so the Dolphins take him on, and it doesn't look like the Dolphins are tanking with this move, but they are. And then add Darren Waller into the mix as well. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, you talk about how Tua sucks, but your team has Cam Ward, who is an unproven rookie, and last year had Will Levis. How do you feel about Tua? Let me say this. Will Levis beat Tua in probably Will Levis's finest moment in his career. At the same time, if Cam Ward ends up being a Tua, and the guy I highlighted the entire time during the draft process when it came to Cam Ward's career being similar to was Kyler Murray. And if that's the case, that was a bad pick. Cam Ward has to be better than Tua. Cam Ward has to be better than Kyler Murray. Jeff says, I and others knew that as well about Tua, Jared. All the stupid interceptions, and he cannot stay on the field with his concussions and injuries. Nobody now will trade for him because of the money that is owed and the concussions that he has. I mean, the concussions are bad, and there's nothing he can do about that. And I am with everybody else when he takes one of those hits, and they always start talking on the shows about, should Tua hang it up? What do you think? I'm always like, I think I might be telling Tua, hey, man, might be time to take a little bit of a step back here. So I'm absolutely in that group. But at the same time, even without the concussions, Tua's too small. His arm's not good enough. And he just cannot beat the other team when the other team is good. Caroline and I went over it this morning. Every single team he beats, it's the Patriots, it's the Jets, it's the Commanders before Jaden Daniels. And every single team he loses to, Buffalo, Baltimore, Kansas City, the top teams in the league. He's just not good. And everybody told me I was crazy. I would watch the games and I'm like, this guy is not good. And they say, oh, Jared, you don't get it. No, I get it. Tua is incredibly replaceable. Trevor Matich joins us next. Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten, is trying to ruin the college football playoff. Has been trying to do it forever, and now he's going on record. We'll get Trevor's thoughts on it next. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 for the game. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They take great care of my home, and they can do the exact same for you. Have you ever called a plumber, an electrician, an HVAC tech, and felt like they were trying to sell you something that you absolutely, positively did not need? If a deal sounds too good to be true, that's probably because, it is. Like a $99 club membership or a $29 tune-up. Seriously, $29 for a tune-up? The reality is they have to find something to fix so they can cover their costs for those quote-unquote discounted club memberships. Unlike the other guys, Hiller never offers deals designed to trick you or sell you something that you do not need. All of you hear me talking about my friends at Hiller constantly, but this is why I trust Hiller in my home. So be like me and schedule online at happyhiller.com. That's happyhiller.com. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical, proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller, call the Happy Face Truck today. This September, Tim McGraw will be performing at Trinkets Rock the Cradle in Nashville, a meaningful event supporting newborns and moms at Ascension St. Thomas Midtown. Get your tickets now at rockthecradle.org. So I saw a headline, Tony Petitti, the commissioner of the Big Ten. Tony Petitti stands by the CFP proposal, giving the Big Ten and the SEC 4 auto bids each. That is known as the 4-4-2-2 model. What that means is that the Big Ten would get 4 automatic qualifiers. The SEC would get 4 automatic qualifiers. The ACC and the Big 12 would get 2 each, and then the rest would all be at-large bids. Everybody's against this. Greg Sankey and the SEC, they're against it, although not officially against it, but they have indicated they're against it. Clark Lee was on our show. He said he was against it. The ACC's against it. The Big 12's against it. Notre Dame is against it. So the only one that wants it's the Big Ten. And I have my theory as to why the Big Ten wants it. I believe the Big Ten wants it because their TV contracts with CBS and NBC are overvalued. As in, CBS and NBC are paying too much money, and the Big Ten knows eventually they're going to be unhappy with Nevada at Penn State. So what does that mean? Let's make up automatic qualifying play-in games. The 2 teams that go to the Big Ten championship game both go to the college football playoff. 1-2, boom. 3 plays 6, 4 plays 5. 1 game goes to CBS, 1 game goes to NBC. Tony Petitti, I have been told, has told Big Ten presidents he's going to get 4 automatic qualifiers when it comes to the playoff. And yet, 2 people whose opinions I care about, one who I think has some inside knowledge, Rick Neuheisel, the other being Caroline, think this is going to happen. Now, Caroline is actually the only sane person I know who's in favor of the 4-4-2-2. She's the only person I know who's not on Tony Petitti's payroll, directly or indirectly, who is in favor of 4-4-2-2. Tony Petitti is saying that they need that for better non-conference games. Quote, the goal is to play more non-conference games because if you're qualifying for the CFP or conference record and then a play-in game, the fact that you play a tough SEC, ACC, or Big 12 team you might get beat on the road or whatever the result is, may impact your seeding down the road, but it's not going to impact your access. There's 3 at-larges, so yeah, it does a little bit, but at the end of the day, that loss early in the season he's referring to would not be fatal. Trevor Matich joins us now on the program, presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, let's start with this. Rick Neuheisel has told me he is convinced that this is going to happen, 4-4-2-2. Now, Greg Sankey's very much against it, and Notre Dame's against it, and the ACC's against it, the Big 12's against it. But Rick Neuheisel said it's going to happen. Do you believe 4-4-2-2 for the college football playoff is going to become a reality?
I think it will, Jared, and I think it should, the way things are set up right now. And that is because the 2 big conferences, and they will remain the 2 big conferences and get even bigger going forward, the Big Ten and the SEC have a different number of conference games. SEC plays 8 conference games, Big Ten plays 9. What that means is that the Big Ten, by having that 9th conference game, schedules an extra loss for half of their teams. And so those won't just be the worst teams in the Big Ten. Sometimes a mid team in the Big Ten will knock off a college football playoff contender. Well, the SEC doesn't have that risk because they only play 8 conference games. And so as long as that disparity exists, I think it's fair for the Big Ten to say, look, we deserve 4 automatic bids because we might have a team that has 4 losses because they played an extra Big Ten game that would have only had 3 losses if they would have played a lesser non-conference game instead of the 9th Big Ten game. And therefore they would have been ranked, in the top 16 instead of just outside the top 16. So if I'm the Big Ten, I get it. And I think it's smart for them to push for it.
Okay. Now Greg Sankey is against it and Notre Dame is against it, and the ACC and the Big 12 are against it. How's he going to be able to push this through?
Well, he'll be able to push it through because he's got a lot of political power. And so it would be that political power that would make it happen. And he's also got this is Tony Petitti now, the commissioner of the Big Ten. He's also got some moral authority here because of the fact that they play 9 conference games and the SEC doesn't. Others do, but the SEC doesn't. That's the big key there. And he might not be able to get it done, but I can see where Notre Dame doesn't want it, because they wouldn't want a 4-loss Big Ten team to get in on an automatic bid, even though they play extra conference games. And Notre Dame this year, I mean, they play their first 2 games are against teams that'll be ranked. After that, their entire schedule will not be ranked in the preseason. We'll see how things shake out. But it's not the kind of schedule that, a 3rd or 4th or 5th caliber Big Ten team this year is probably going to have to face. And so, of course, Notre Dame would like to sneak in there and grab that spot, rather than it being guaranteed for the Big Ten. So right now, Greg Sankey, his job is not to do what's best for college football. He's the SEC commissioner. His job is to do what's best for the SEC, with a nod towards, you can't just obliterate the rest of college football and have that be good for the SEC. There still has to be some balance there. Tony Petitti's job, commissioner of the Big Ten, is to do what's best for the Big Ten. And the rest of college football is there to serve the needs of the Big Ten, essentially. And I don't mind any of that. But the fact that there's a counterbalance in terms of 2 major power conferences, and then the rest of the conferences that are out there kind of balancing everything out, I think will give us a fairly good result right now. But after a while, once again, because there's so much money going into the SEC and the Big Ten, over the course of 5 years, 10 years from now, if nothing really changes in the trajectory of college football, those 2 are going to call all the shots, and everybody else is just going to be looking for scraps.
So I don't have a problem with that. I would agree with you. I do think that Notre Dame, like I've said this, we can do college football without the teams in the ACC, and we can probably do it without the teams in the Big 12. I don't think we can do college football without Notre Dame. So they at least hold some cards in this. Here's what I just don't understand about, again, the Big Ten and their fascination with the 4-4-2-2. I know why they want it. Again, I think it is because they want to give CBS and NBC a de facto play-in game on championship weekend so that they can justify the $350 million a year that they're getting from both of them, while they're giving them, again, Nevada at Penn State on CBS. But if Greg Sankey is opposed to it, and he has said as of now he's opposed to it, and the numbers back up, the SEC going to 4-4-2-2 would be giving up playoff teams. Last year, under a 4-4-2-2 model, Miami gets in, South Carolina gets knocked out. Why would Greg Sankey want to do that? Like, why would Greg Sankey want? So if he doesn't want to do it and Notre Dame doesn't want to do it, then why does the Big Ten, Trevor, in your opinion, get their way? They would have to, in my opinion, convince the SEC to do it, and it doesn't sound like the SEC has any interest in this.
Right, and this is where the fight is. I think the Big Ten has an uphill battle, because ultimately the argument's going to be that if you have 4 teams that the committee deems worthy of being in the playoff, and the committee is supposed to take into account strength of schedule and quality wins, that kind of thing, then why would you be afraid to just play it out and see how it turns out? I mean, they had 4 teams in last year's playoff. I think the SEC did as well, right? And so the SEC had Texas, Tennessee, Ohio
Georgia,
State, and Oregon. So anyway, so I think it's going to be hard to kind of push it through. I think it should be pushed through. I think it's fair for the Big Ten, to have those automatic 4 teams because of the fact they have that extra conference game. And again, we're just comparing the SEC and the Big Ten right now. But, the SEC, the reason they don't want that is that they think the SEC believes it's deeper than the Big Ten. So that the 4th team in the SEC is better than Indiana, who made the playoff last year, that kind of a thing. And that because of that extra depth in the SEC, that the strength of schedule in the SEC will favor that conference over strength of schedule in the Big Ten for teams that are trying to fight for those last couple of playoff spots. And so it's better for the SEC for there not to be a 4th guaranteed spot there, or a 3rd or a 4th for the Big Ten. And so I get it. Everybody's got a really good argument here.
But again, Trevor, here's what I'm struggling with. If the SEC says no, and the ACC says no, and the Big 12 says no, and Notre Dame says no, how does this become a reality?
Well, it wouldn't. It wouldn't. Because the Big Ten doesn't have veto power over the SEC. The SEC doesn't have veto power over the Big Ten either. The thing that I don't know is if it's got to be unanimous in order to go forward. And if that's the case, then the Big Ten does hold veto, just as the SEC would hold veto on the other side, if it's got to be unanimous. I don't know, though, what the voting standards are in order to push this through. If it's a majority of teams, conferences, if it's 3/5 plus Notre Dame, this kind of a thing, then the Big Ten's in trouble. But what we'd have to do is find out whether or not it has to be unanimous in order to make it work.
Trevor Matich with us on the program. Here's the other thing of why I don't think the SEC will do this. When it comes to elite programs in college football, not elite teams that had good years like Indiana had last year, but elite college football programs, how many of those exist in the Big Ten? Off the top of my head, I would say Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC. That's 4. In the SEC, I would argue they have 9 to 10 schools at the same caliber of those 4 schools in the Big Ten, whether it is Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Texas, Texas A&M, LSU, Florida. And I feel like I'm starting to run through teams here. Florida.
Yeah.
And I know that it's like 9. Auburn, for instance. And then the last one's Ole Miss, who I'm kind of on the fence with, where like I could see, Ole Miss one way or another. Yeah, no, whatever. So take them out. 9 teams. Oklahoma, add them in there too. If I'm the SEC, I'm not on equal footing with the Big Ten because the Big Ten's not as good as me.
Well, that's what the SEC says. The Big Ten says no. The Big Ten says different. First of all, we won the last 2 national championships.
But Michigan State is probably like the 6th best team in the Big Ten on a year in, year out basis, and they're not better than LSU.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Although I think LSU's got a good chance to run to the national championship this year. But just overall, year in and year out, you're absolutely correct. And that is the SEC's best argument. That you guys say, Big Ten, that you've got all these great teams in the middle, but you really don't. The Big Ten says, oh, yeah, Illinois won 10 games last year. We had 4 teams in the playoff. We've got teams on the rise that you normally don't expect. And then the addition of Oregon, who won the Big Ten last year, puts the Big Ten ahead of or at least equal to the SEC from a standpoint of depth. And it's depth that makes the difference, because without depth, that 9th SEC game, Big Ten game doesn't have as much impact. But that's where the fight is. The fight is the depth of the Big Ten, because of that extra conference game, does the depth of the Big Ten make that a super perilous extra game compared to what the SEC has to face with 8 conference games? And so, and this is something that I don't think you'd be able to prove in front of a judge one way or the other to beyond a reasonable doubt. This is why I think it's just going to come down to what's the procedure of this thing. Because the Big Ten, if they have veto, because you have to have their vote, everybody's got to agree in order to make these kinds of changes. If that's the case, then the Big Ten can just say, fine then. We're happy staying where we were. We're happy staying with a 12-team playoff, and we'll just go from there. And you're not going to get your 16-team playoff. And so it's like a child that just folds his arms and pitches a fit and decides that he's not going to do anything about it. So the Big Ten feels strongly enough to do that. And if it does, because of the procedure of the vote, torpedo the whole thing, I think the Big Ten's fine with having 12. The Big Ten made out like bandits with a 12-team playoff last season.
Trevor Matich with us on the program here, presented by Houston Clinic, where the PHM experience matters. Paul Feinbaum had a doozy of a take today. I've got to get Trevor's opinion on it. We'll do that next. Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106 for the game.
Paul Feinbaum, what are your expectations for Arch?
The absolute roof. I think there's a reasonably good chance that Arch Manning will be sitting on the front row in New York at the Heisman ceremony. That's assuming that his team does what it's supposed to do and compete for not only the SEC, but for the national championship. And I really believe they will. I think Steve Sarkisian, who's one of the most amazing play callers I've ever seen, made a critical mistake late in the year. He was way too loyal to Quinn Ewers, who was banged up and was really ineffective. Had Arch Manning been instituted in the second half of that game, like Nick Saban did a couple of years ago with Tagovailoa, I think there's a reasonably good chance that Texas would have beaten Ohio State and won the national championship. They're very capable of doing it again this year. I believe also that Arch Manning is the best college football quarterback we have seen since Tim Tebow entered the scene in 2006.
Okay, Trevor Matich, you just heard right there what Paul Feinbaum said. Arch Manning, front row in New York at the Heisman. Steve Sarkisian, massive mistake, playing Quinn Ewers over him, and best quarterback since Tim Tebow in 2006. Trevor is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, where experience matters. Trevor, do you agree, yay or nay, with Paul Feinbaum?
I disagree based on what we know right now. It is very possible, and you can make a good case that Arch is the most talented, but he has a lot to prove in order to show that he's the best. Those are two different things, because you can make a case that Tim Tebow is not one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play college football, but he is one of the greatest college quarterbacks to ever play the game. And so right now, Arch still has too much to prove. I mean, what he showed last year was an amazing touch throw in the deep pass. And if he continues that this year, then that will key Texas towards a national championship run. But Arch also made mistakes last year, and he got himself hit way too hard too many times in his limited appearances last year. And in a full season of that, what will it do? I mean, you look at Quinn Ewers last year. Quinn Ewers never threw the ball down the field, hardly ever. As a matter of fact, at one point late in the season, Quinn Ewers, a quarterback for Texas, was 14th in the SEC in air yards per pass attempt. It was all at or near the line of scrimmage. But, you know, I get whispers out of Texas that the injuries that he had to play through last year were more limiting than anybody let on. And so if you've got, and still, Quinn Ewers got them to the college football semifinals with a chance to move on from there. And so, you know, Arch, you know, he may be that great. He may be. I expect him to be great. But to say he's the greatest since Tebow, that kind of a thing, let's let him actually do a few things. Now, what's good for him is that the first game is at Ohio State. But Ohio State lost a ton of guys to the draft, as did Texas. But Ohio State's going to be probably, or at least very possibly, starting a true freshman at quarterback. And so if not, they'll be starting a young guy at quarterback. Texas or Ohio State will be. And certainly a guy that doesn't have as much polish and experience in the system as Arch Manning does for Texas. And so I think Texas is going to have an edge, at least an edge, maybe a big edge at quarterback. And if they're able to knock that off, their next games are San Jose State, UTEP, and Sam Houston before they get a bye, and then they go play Florida. So if they're competitive against Ohio State and Arch plays pretty well, or if they beat Ohio State, then the next three games are going to be cakewalks for Texas. They should be. And then the hype for Arch is going to be everything that Paul Feinbaum says it's going to be. But I would want to see him perform at a high level in the SEC consistently before I actually put that crown on his head.
Trevor, who would you say Arch Manning reminds you of? You can't say Peyton or Eli because he's a much better athlete than Peyton or Eli were.
You know, let me give you a comparison to a guy in the SEC right now, Garrett Nussmeier. Nussmeier at LSU has a terrific arm. I think Arch has more arm talent, but Nussmeier's arm is an NFL arm. Nussmeier is quite mobile, but Nussmeier is a multi-year starter. And so I think that's going to be the big comparison that people will have with Arch Manning. And another could be Lenora Sellers. Lenora Sellers of South Carolina is a much better runner and probably a better athlete and more strong physically than Arch Manning is. And Lenore Sellers has a massive cannon for an arm. And if he continues to grow as a passer to get closer to where Arch Manning is at the craft of passing, then that's a guy that would compare very well to Arch Manning. Same thing in Florida, DJ Lagway. They had a really strong end of the season last year at quarterback for the Gators, and he's the kind of guy that's even stronger and a better athlete than Arch, and a cannon for an arm. We'll see if he's able to turn that arm strength into the craft of passing, which Arch I think is ahead of everybody. But I wouldn't say right away that he's even going to be the best quarterback in the SEC, not yet, because he's going to have competition to have to prove that he's better than.
Trevor, if you had to pick who the number one pick in next year's draft was going to be today, and let's say Arch, unlike Peyton and Eli, Arch is ready to, if Arch is good enough to go, Arch is going to go. Who would be the number one pick in your opinion, if you had to guess?
If I had to guess, I would say Arch. And the reason is that in the NFL, having a mobile quarterback is a very good thing. Arch is mobile enough. Just like Jaden Daniels, who was the second pick in the draft for the Commanders, was plenty mobile enough. But ultimately in the NFL, at quarterback, if you can't win with your arm, if you rely on your legs, you're probably not going to get far. Although people could nod towards Jalen Hurts with the Eagles. But I think Arch has the best combination of arm talent, enough athleticism, and the makeup to be an NFL quarterback based on all the mental gymnastics that you have to go through. If I'm an NFL team right now and I have to take a risk, my risk is Arch.
Trevor Matich, as always, is presented by Houston Clinic Orthopedics, when experience matters. Trevor, great stuff. We will talk soon.
Thanks, Jared.
Yep, Trevor Matich joining us on the program on Canada Day. Barry Trotz met with the media. And as we all know, Barry Trotz, very, very long-winded. I asked Robbie Stanley, give me the Cliff Notes. He has what Barry Trotz said today in Cliff Note form. So we'll hit that next. And, of course, the moves the Predators have made. And what does it look like on paper? Here on July 1, though, we learned last year what happens on paper isn't always the biggest deal. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 105 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106 through the game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. We are presented by the Southern Bank of Tennessee. Barry Trotz today. You heard in Jake's update that the Predators went all in, 2.75 on a right shot defenseman today, Nick Hague, a guy that Adam Vingan did a cartwheel on the air for when the Predators signed as a free agent for the Tampa Bay Lightning. He's a third pair guy, but he should be given an expanded role, we assume, at 27 years old with the Predators. So instead of running Barry Trotz's press conference live, which I don't think we had the capability of doing, I decided instead of that, what we're just going to do is get the cliff notes from Robbie Stanley, who was there. So Robbie Stanley has given us the cliff notes, and I feel like, Jake, that suffice, right? For the audience and all of us out there. We can listen to it on our own time, but Robbie probably will have all the highlights for us.
Right. He can give us the bullet points.
Here you go. This is from Robbie. Quote, Trotz loves Nick Hague, thinks he will play in the top 4, loves the size they've added, period. Acknowledges lack of depth at center and says they're going to have to defend their asses off, period. Says Soros took too much crap last year, period. Says Martin could absolutely make the team out of camp, period. Says Tanner Molendyk is a good player and, quote, they'll find ways to put good players on our team, period. Basically said the free agent class totally sucked it forward without outright saying it that way. So that is the rundown from Robbie Stanley on what Barry Trotz had to say. So in case you didn't know, via the contract that they gave Nick Hague, Trotz loves Nick Hague. Trotz loves the size they've added on defense. Hague, who's a big body, and Pervix. I mean, Jake, I want to say Pervix is like 6'4".
Yeah, I think I saw he's like 6'4", 210.
Okay, so they're adding some big old boys on defense. So that's the first thing. Trotz loves them. And so if he's going to play a top 4 role, my guess is he's probably going to be the top pair left shot defenseman, and Roman Josi will flip over to the right side. That is not something I like. Trotz did say on the show last week that they could move Josi over to the right side and that they needed to add a right shot defenseman to go with Brady Shea. So again, parsing the tea leaves here, it looks like it's going to be Hague on the first pair, Josi as the right shot on the first pair, Shea on the left side of the second pair, and Pervix on the right side of that second pair. And then my guess is the third pair will probably have Tanner Molendyk on the left side and Justin Barron on the right side. That's my guess as of right now. This is the one thing Robbie said that bothered me. Acknowledges lack of depth at center and says they're going to have to defend their asses off. Now, I need to hear what Trotz actually said in regards to that, about, hey, like, we're not going to be good at center, so we're going to have to play great on defense and we're going to have to be good on the wing or whatever he said. I don't know. But how do you get the best out of Steven Stamkos if you put nothing but Scarbinis next to Steven Stamkos? 1 year ago, they signed Stamkos, and I was like everybody else, yay! And they signed Jonathan Marchessault, and I was like everybody else, yay! But I kept saying, who's going to be the second line center? We had Andrew Burnett on the show the day that they made all those signings, and Burnett said, we're going to give Tommy Novak the first crack at it. And I was very, very nervous about the idea of giving Tommy Novak that first crack because Tommy Novak in the Vancouver series looked like he was overmatched. Physically and mentally looked like that was too big for him in that Vancouver series. Novak was off the second line by the third period of the first game. And then Barry would come on the show and we'd say, what are you going to do, second line center? And Barry would say, well, nobody wants to trade a second line center, so I don't know what I'm going to do. And when I hear that they're going to try Fedor Svechkov as the second line center, I get very nervous. Now, this is what pairs with the second thing that Robbie added or I guess the second thing after Robbie added in his cliff notes that Trotz acknowledged the lack of depth at center, says Martin could absolutely make the team out of camp. Boom. There's your second line center. That tells me Barry Trotz in his head is thinking Brady Martin can center the second line next to Steven Stamkos, and I would assume Michael Bunting. That's who I would put him with, because Bunting is tough. He's physical. He gets in front of the net, so Stamkos can stand there on the wing, and then you ask Brady Martin at 19 years old, go drive the play. Because I certainly think Martin is better than Fedor Svechkov. No disrespect to him. But that one about the lack of center depth bothers me, because that was a very big problem that they had last season that they could not get solved. And I would agree. The free agent class at forward this year was awful. When I see names like Victor Arvidsson, who was toast 5 years ago, Tanner Jeannot, who is a bottom six forward, when Mikhail Granlund is one of the top names on the board entering the day, you know it's a terrible day and a terrible free agent class as far as the forward position is concerned. But one way or another, they've got to get this second line center situation figured out. The other thing that I do find to be very telling is when it comes to Tanner Molendyk. And it feels like Tanner Molendyk, in terms of ready to play, has passed Matthew Wood basically the second that he was drafted. And the reason I say that is because Barry Trotz said on this show, Andrew Burnett wanted Tanner Molendyk on the team 2 years ago. And Barry Trotz said, no, juniors. Last year, no, juniors. Now, I did see a tweet from Brooks Bratton who said that when it came to Molendyk, that Molendyk says, hey, when I was in Saskatoon, I played the right side. So this whole right shot, left shot thing, I can play the right side. I read that tweet and I said to myself, that's Tanner Molendyk saying, I'll do whatever it takes to crack the lineup. He is a left shot defenseman. I'd like to play him on the left side, but it seems to me, and Barron, I can't stand, but on the third pair with Molendyk, easing him in there, I think I could do that. But if Haig is going to be in the top four, and if Trotz sticks to what he told us last week, which is going to add a right shot defenseman for Brady Shea, that would be Pervix, and going to flip Yossi to the left side. And if Robbie says Haig's going to play in the top four, it's going to be Haig and Yossi on that top pair, Shea and Pervix, question mark on the left side, and then Justin Barron on the right. I think it's going to be Molendyk who's going to be on this team. So I'd put that on defense, although he does love Willsby, and so does Robbie. And I think Brady Martin's going to make the team. I think there's a legitimate chance Brady Martin's going to make this team. 615-737-1025, which is our phone number, 615-737-1025. Here's one question. If we feel like the Predators aren't going to be very good, then there's one big question I have when it comes to Brady Martin, Tanner Molendyk, the young guys Trotz says he's going to put in the lineup. We'll get to that next. Stillman and Company, 102, and of course your phones, 615-737-1025, Stillman and Company, 102.5 the Game.
So let me ask you now, July 1st is coming up. Last year you guys were very active. What do you think it's going to be like this year in terms of maybe moving some pieces around or adding some pieces? What do you expect to do with your team in free agency?
Well, last year, obviously, I think I won July 1, according to everybody. And I was the one that said, too, it's fantasy hockey until it, become a good team. We did most of our work last year, and then the way the season went, I was using the term clean the porch a little bit for our young guys. The plan hasn't changed for us. The plan has always been in pen, and really the path has been in pencil. And I didn't think we were going to have the year we had last year, but when we went to where we were last year, as I said, this year we're going to start the infusion of some younger players. We've got a really good group that we feel that are ready to pop out of the American League. They've spent a year, maybe 2 years in the American League, and they're now ready to contribute at the National Hockey League level. So there'll be a really good blend.
There you go. That was Barry Trotz during the draft to add Pervix into the group. And here's what I think the lines are going to be. This is just me. Trotz says, of course, they could still add, but seems like, hey, we're going to go with the young guys here. Instead of trying to go out and add another center, instead of trying to go out, we're going to go with the young guys. This is not what I would do, per se. But this is what I think the lines will be. Forsberg, O'Reilly, and Marchessault. Stamkos, Brady Martin, and Michael Bunting. Eric Halla, Fedor Svechkov, Luke Evangelista. Cole Smith, Michael McCarron, Zachary Leroux. Nick Hague, Roman Josi. Brady Shea, Michael Pervix. Tanner Molendyke, Justin Barron, Saros. In net, who, by the way, congratulations to Saros. His no movement clause has kicked in. So I guess we're stuck with him until my son is 9 years old. You're stuck with UC Saros as the goalie, which once you get past all the other problems with the team, that is a problem that needs to be addressed. Although Robbie Stanley did say that in the Trotz press conference, which we have not listened to, in the Trotz press conference, he said Saros took too much crap last year. It'd be nice if Saros could win a game and prove to us that he doesn't need to take the crap, but I guess that's a different discussion for a different day. Here's the question I have, though, because I don't feel very good when it comes to this team. Those lines I just told you, I don't feel very good about that being a very good team next year. When I hear Barry Trotz say, like, hey, I've won before without great centers, we're just going to have to play defense. Well, now you're kind of wasting Steven Stamkos. You need a real center next to Steven Stamkos, in my opinion. But the reason I say this is when it comes to Martin and Molendyke, what's in their best interest? Is it in the best interest of Brady Martin to put him out there right away, opening night, Bridgestone Arena, second line? You're not going to put Brady Martin on your third or fourth line. Second line next to Hall of Famer Steven Stamkos and say, go get him, son. Or would it be better to start him in Milwaukee and really try to say, like, hey, man, like, we don't want you to go back to juniors. We want you to go to Milwaukee for a little bit, and then we're bringing you up. But start him on the first line in Milwaukee. Convince him to go to Milwaukee. Start him on the first line next to Matthew Wood and Reed Schaefer and these young kids that Trotz talks about so much, or Joakim Kimmel and Ozzy Weisblatt, and say, okay, you're going to play for the first month of the year with these guys in Milwaukee. You're going to play first line, first power play unit, and you're going to get a lot of ice time. And then once you're ready, which we'll determine, then we'll bring you up. That's first thing. Do you want him to have a little success? Do you want him to get a taste of what it's going to be like in the first line? What it's going to be like, again, being the leader, being on that, getting the first line minutes, first power play unit, those kind of things. Because once you get to the NHL, he's not going to be on the first power play unit. Because that's going to be O'Reilly, and that's going to be Forsberg, that's going to be Stamkos, it's going to be Marchessault, it's going to be Josi. That's going to be your first power play unit. So he's not going to be on that. But then he probably is going to be on the second power play unit. So do you want to start him off at an easier level with guys, again, Matthew Wood and Ozzy Weisblatt and Joakim Kimmel and Reed Schaefer, guys that, again, when all these guys come up to the big leagues, you would expect him to play with. The other thing is Mullendijk. Again, the tweet from Brooks Bratton, and I love Brooks Bratton with all my heart. And Brooks is just reporting what's being said. But what Brooks said, Brooks's tweet today was basically Tanner Mullendijk says he can play the right side. And I get it. If I was Tanner Mullendijk, I'd say the same thing. Tanner Mullendijk is saying, hey, I've played the right side in Saskatoon. Here you go. A tidbit we learned yesterday at Pred's development camp. Although he shoots left, Pred's prospective defenseman Tanner Mullendijk played on the right side his first 4 years in Saskatoon. Quote, there's pros and cons, but I liked playing on the right side. That coming from Mullendijk. I read that as, I'll do whatever it takes to crack the lineup. Should Mullendijk start off right away on the third pair for the Predators and then move from the third pair and ultimately move his way up? Or, and I think Trotz dreams of this at night, Andrew Gibson, the big right shot defenseman they traded a second-round pick for, who's a former second-rounder of the Red Wings. Andrew Gibson on the first pair at Milwaukee next to Mullendijk, and they're playing first pair minutes like they played first pair minutes together on Team Canada in the World Juniors, which at the time was a very big deal to Trotz. So do you just put them out there right away? Or do you want them to have success with the younger guys that when push comes to shove, that's who they're going to play with big picture, long term? Or do you just stick them out there? Because I have a really hard time believing there are 6 defensemen better than Tanner Mullendijk on the team. And I know there's not a second center better than Brady Martin. Like I'm telling you right now, in terms of overall ability right now, O'Reilly 1, Martin 2, ahead of Fedor Svechkov. 615-737-1025. And our phone line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025. Robbie sent me a tweet that he sent out for the Trotz press conference. Trotz also said Saros took too much heat last year because the defensive play around him said the defensive group will be improved and make his life easier. Quote, last year, there were times where it was very unfair for him. He took a lot of heat for it unnecessarily. Again, this is what just pisses me off when it comes to the Saros stuff. If Saros is so good that I have to give him an 8-year contract and I have to give him a full no move and I have to move Yaroslav Askarov, and it's never his fault when they lose. And trust me, for 6 years, it's never been his fault when they lose, according to everyone. They lost the bubble series against that crappy Arizona team. He had a sub-9 save percentage, and it wasn't his fault, they all told me. If he's so good that I have to give him all the money and I have to give him the no movement clause, then why every time he sucks is it not his fault? I'm so sick and tired of that. I mean, I've seen Pekka Rinne play with basically the same team in front of him. And when Pekka was really good, he carried this team. And then when Pekka crapped down his pants in 2018, you lost. And that's on the goalie. Oh, it drives me crazy. Joey from Bellevue says, sounds like Barry Trotz is coaching the team when he says he relies on defense. What is Andrew Burnett's job? I think Andrew Burnett's just glad he has a job. I think that he'll probably sit there and be cool with it. Skyler says center for the Predators is the same as left tackle for the Titans. There is some truth to that, but the Titans actually traditionally are very good at left tackle. Right now, I'd say first pair defense for the Predators is what left tackle is for the Titans, because it's kind of risky. They're going to see if these guys that really weren't that good in other places can do it. Nick Hague, he was a third pair defenseman, but we're going to see if he can do it on the first pair. That's kind of like Dan Moore. Even though Dan Moore did start for the Steelers. But the Titans used to have Brad Hopkins and Michael Roos and Taylor Lewan. Like, again, none of those guys were Hall of Famers. But they were great players at left tackle. Even Lewan, who, again, sometimes, a lot of the time, drives me just a little bit crazy. One texter into the text line says, one thing I'll add about the young guys is if Joakim Kimmel is not up and contributing this year after all I've heard about his shot for the last 2 seasons, then they need to move on. If he can put the puck in the net, he needs to be on the big boy team. Well, Barry says he'll be on the big boy team. Make of that what you will. Again, all I'll say when it comes to the prospects, take Brady Martin out of this because Brady Martin was a top 5 pick. And when you're picking that high, you're getting probably the best of the best. So you should hit on a top 5, top 10 pick. So take that aside. For every 10 prospects you have, 3 or 4 will work. For every 5, 1 or 2. So for this group of Joachim Kimmel, David Edstrom, Matthew Wood, Reed Schaefer, Ozzy Weisblatt, all first-round picks. I think Edstrom might have been a second-round pick, but a high second. Of that group, one guy's probably going to pop. One guy. But that's how it works. One texter says, Brady Martin cannot go to Milwaukee per the CBA until he's 20. It's either the NHL or back to juniors. Fine. Put him in the NHL. I'm not sending him to juniors. Sorry. I can't send him to juniors. One texter says they've got to think about Roman Josi and his POTS diagnosis and how it will affect him. The way they talk about it, they're like, well, Katie Ledecky has it and she's just fine. My guess is they're going to try it, and if it doesn't work, then they'll adjust. Then they'll put Josi on long-term injured reserve, and then my guess would be that Justin Barron pops up there to the first pair. And depressing. So depressing. I also hate this rule that Brady Martin can't go to Milwaukee. That I don't like. That puts you in a tough spot. 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025, more of your phones. Plus, if you didn't like the Brady Martin pick and you wanted James Higgins like I did, you got to hear. You've got to hear the reaction for the people that took James Higgins. We'll get to that next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
The Predators pick is in at 5th overall.
Oh my God, here we
Here's
go.
Commissioner Gary Bettman.
Here we go.
Nashville Predators, one of Smashville's all-time greats and a 2024 inductee into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I give you Shea Weber.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here making the Nashville Predators first selection. What a big day for these young athletes. Just the start's beginning for him. So, I mean, there's a journey ahead of you, and I want to wish you guys all the best of luck. I want to say hi to all the fans at Bridgestone. I know you guys probably aren't having any fun. I miss you guys. What a place to play. With that, with the 5th overall selection, the Nashville Predators in the 2025 NHL entry draft select from the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds, Brady Martin.
Brady Martin is the Predators pick at 5th overall. Not one of the 2 who we expected, but one of the top players in the draft. He was ranked as the number 11 North American skater, but he's been ranked higher than that, and he was a player that was heavily rumored to go 4th overall to Utah. So Brady Martin from the Sioux, who is not at the draft because he is on his farm in Ontario, too busy choring to be there. The good Canadian boy, Brady Martin, is your newest Pred.
This guy's a savage. He's a, if you want to.
It's one of your guys too, Mace. Mace was talking about him. He was all fired up about him.
Yeah, but he's a guy that's if you want to talk about guys that's like a cut in the mold of a Kachuk, Brady or Matthew. He's got skill. He's more of a straight line player, I would say, than a creator. The guy hits everything that moves, and he's an absolute savage. You know, again, we're talking, it's tough to pass up a James Higgins type of a skill set, but you're getting a different kind of element to the game. The guy can score. He's not, I wouldn't say the biggest playmaker or creator or driver, but he's a guy, he's going to get things done. So this is the identity I think the Predators wanted to go for.
Okay, there you go. That was the Brady Martin pick. And most of us in Nashville, when we heard that, thought, oh, no. Of course, Chris Mason did not feel that way, at least vocally. He did not feel that way. As I said yesterday, I was just stunned in silence that the Predators passed on James Higgins with that pick out of BC to take Brady Martin. Now, I get it. I mean, Brady Martin, top competitor in the draft. Trotz said on our show last Tuesday that the compete level was the most important thing, so it didn't shock me. But I was a little disappointed. Meanwhile, it was Boston who got to take the kid out of BC with the 7th overall pick. Happy freaking Gilmore was there to make the pick for them, which I thought was actually pretty cool, unlike Shea Weber on Zoom. And so the Boston Bruins got the guy that I and a lot of Predator fans wanted the Predators to draft. So how do you think they're reacting to that in Boston? This is our guy, Mike Felger. Remember, I went on a show at the Super Bowl. We play his cuts all the time. Incredibly opinionated. Who, by the way, apparently called me crazy. I don't know if it was last week or the week before that. Said, yeah, our guy Jared Stillman in Nashville, he's kind of crazy. I don't think I'm more crazy than they are, but again, that's a different discussion for a different day. This was Mike Felger on 98.5 The Sports Hub in Boston. His reaction to the Bruins drafting the guy that most of us in Nashville wanted the Predators to draft, James Higgins, with the 7th overall pick.
Someone's got to explain that to me. 2 straight BC kids in a row. And yes, I went to BU, so I am kind of wired to not like BC. That's true. You can call me out on that bias if you want. But having following it over the years, they tend to be kind of soft coming out of there. And when I read about this kid, you know who he's compared to?
Well, in the magazine, it was Jack Hughes.
Jack Hughes. I hate Jack Hughes. I can't stand that kid's game. I can't stand it. All the games against the Devils, every now and then something off the rush because he's quick, but he didn't stick his nose in there. And then in the Four Nations, he was disgusting. I was disgusted watching this Hughes kid in the Four Nations. I can't stand Jack Hughes. And that's what that's his comp. Another soft-ass BC. We just keep drafting BC kids who lose in the second round. They couldn't get out of hockey. When they lose in Hockey East, they didn't even win Hockey East. Did they lose in the semis of Hockey East? BU wiped the floor with them.
And now you got two of their guys. So this is without really predicting what he's going to be. I don't know what he's going to be. I hate the pick. I hate it.
Now, in all fairness, he begins with his bias that he went to BC's rival school. And at the same time, if you don't like BC kids, then you won't like Teddy Stiga, whom the Predators took in the second round last year and is at development camp because Teddy Stiga is a BC kid too. But I did say this when James Hagens got picked by the Bruins. Don Sweeney, who is the general manager of the Bruins, has a history of horrendous draft choices. Just horrendous picks in the draft. Go back to that 2015 draft. They had 3 picks in a row. They missed on all 3. And then I think Matthew Barzal and Thomas Chabot and maybe Brock Besser all went like pick right after that. So make of that what you will. The guy that everybody here wanted, they in Boston apparently don't want. He went to BC, so they would see him more than we do. That's just one guy's opinion. And the Bruins can't draft. But I did think it was funny that, again, I couldn't even have that reaction from Brady Martin because I just don't know enough about him. I mean, there's just not, I'm not going to watch all the highlights and I'm not going to watch all the, film and tape and see these guys live the way Trotz did or anything like that. So I'm not going to tell you, oh, this guy sucks or he's going to be a bad pick. I know what they needed. They needed a second. They really needed a first line center. They think he's going to be a first line center. Today, Barry Trotz apparently bet his life, according to Robbie Stanley, bet his life that Preds fans will love Brady Martin. By the way, there are 2 things Trotz said. Jake, I want your opinion on this. Number 1, Trotz said that Preds fans are going to love Brady Martin. He bets his life on it. The second thing is he thought that Saros got too much blame last year. Do you think both of those are kind of directly related to me?
It's possible. It's very possible, especially the UC Saros one. I kind of had a thought that he was talking indirectly to you on that one. The Brady Martin one, I think he does have the mindset that Preds fans would love, but he does have to produce offensively. Like if he is going to be a top 6 center, he has to actually put points on the board. He can't just be the guy who hits everybody.
Yeah, I think the reason, what I guess I'm getting at is, does Trotz know that the fans hate to pick? And I mean, Trotz clearly knows the fans hate to pick. Does he know the fans hate to pick because they hate to pick because everybody says to him, hey man, the fans hate to pick? Or does he know the fans hate to pick because we've talked at length about how much the fans hate to pick and someone's like, hey, Stillman on the radio and everybody hate to pick? The Saros thing's definitely coming from me because every week I asked him about Saros and I begged him 100 times like, hey, don't sign him. Whatever you do, do not sign him. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHunter.com. One texter says, destined for the bottom 5 again. Brady Martin is not ready for the NHL, much less second-line minutes and the responsibilities. Fedor Svechkov is better than you're giving him credit for, but still not an answer for the top-line center. Trotz's leadership and thought process are very concerning. Texter says, Porter Martone should have been the pick. So a bunch of people have said this, that the rule is Brady Martin cannot go to the AHL because he's not 20 years old. So Brady Martin would have to go back to juniors or play with the Preds. For me, Brady Martin is then starting the year as the second line center of the Predators, and we're going to give it 8 games or 9 games or whatever it is. And then if it's not good enough, he goes down and he goes back to juniors. My hope is that he's good enough through the first 10 games and then he stays up there. I hate this idea that you can't just send somebody who's 19 or 18 years old if they want to right to the AHL. I hate it. One texter says, every time you play the pick of Shea Weber making the selection, I cringe. Not because of the pick, but just the whole setup. Chris Mason said that he's not a playmaker and said he is a savage twice. Very telling that is the culture that the Predators want. We want hitters, not playmakers. Barry is probably a huge UFC fan. Savages hits everything in front of you. So here is the one kind of issue I had when it came to Trotz's press conference that we haven't heard that Robbie, summarized for us. And that was the idea. And I think I saw a tweet about this where Trotz is like, hey, I've won a lot of times where we had to win through the wings and on defense because we didn't have great center depth. And this year, maybe that. Well, if that's the case, then Steven Stamkos is not a fit for your team. You need a center to go with Steven Stamkos. Like, you need a center to go there. 615-737-1025. I think it's a minor story, but I think it's worth keeping an eye on. We'll hit on it next. Stillman and Company, 105 The Game.
you women out there, y'all petty, man. Hey, LeBron, you're 100% right on these girls hating on Caitlin Clark. Y'all petty, girls. I expect men to be petty because we're the most insecure group in the world. You are. Y'all should be thanking that girl for getting y'all ass private charters, all the money and visibility she bringing to the WNBA. Don't be petty like dudes. Listen, what she's accomplished, give her flowers. Stop being petty, all you women out there. She got y'all ass charters. She bringing all y'all this money to the table, but y'all being petty like dudes. LeBron, you are 100% right. Y'all girls, stop being petty. Caitlin Clark, thank you for bringing all that money and shine to the WNBA. Well, they're going to hate you.
There you go. That was Charles Barkley, and the pettiness just continues when it comes to Caitlin Clark. I don't know if you guys saw this, but so the fans voted for the WNBA All-Star Game. Fans voted number one, Caitlin Clark. I mean, not even close. Media had Caitlin, I think, third or fourth as far as the voting was concerned. And the player vote had her ninth amongst guards in the WNBA. As Charles Barkley would say, y'all petty. Now, Caitlin Clark is starting in the WNBA All-Star Game, which is good because she's made that league legit. And yesterday, Cleveland, Detroit, and Philadelphia were awarded WNBA franchises, even though Detroit's already had a team, and apparently that didn't work out, and Cleveland's already had a team, and that didn't work out, which means Bill Haslam, the owner of the Nashville Predators, his group that he was putting together, along with Peyton Manning and Candace Parker and the Tennessee Summit that was going to pay homage to Pat Summitt, they did not get their team. Bill Haslam said, while we believe our proposed ownership group put a great foot forward for Nashville and the state of Tennessee with the concept of the summit, we understand and accept the WNBA's decision today in awarding franchises to NBA ownership groups. This decision does not end our commitment to Nashville and women's sports fans. We will continue to keep our eye on future opportunities and evaluate them as they present themselves. I am confident that one day Tennessee will be the home of a major professional women's sports franchise. Way to go. Here's the one thing I'll say. I can't tell you whether or not Nashville should have gotten a team or shouldn't have, because I don't look at all the data and all the facts and everything else that they have. And I do understand the whole, hey, these people own NBA teams and the NBA backs the WNBA, so that makes sense. But here's the other thing I don't know about the WNBA. Is the WNBA actually becoming popular? Like, is Caitlin Clark carrying this league in which Mark Davis, Caroline told me today, Mark Davis bought the Las Vegas Aces for $2 million in 2021. And they are now worth $290 million. A franchise fee in the WNBA is $250 million. I mean, again, I don't know how much money Derek made as a player. I don't know how much money Derek has saved up, but I'm willing to guess, like, if it was $2 million, don't you think Derek could have bought the WNBA team and it'd be worth $290 million today? Think about that. But is this just like a Caitlin Clark fad, or is this legit? Like, the WNBA is here to stay. And I don't know the answer to that. I don't think that Bill Haslam decided that he wanted to bring a WNBA team to Nashville just so he can sit up in the box and cheer on his team. So I clearly think that he thinks it's a big business decision. But again, I don't know. Is this like just a one-hit wonder, or is this the real deal? That's it for us. We are out of here today. Stillman and company. We will see everybody tomorrow at 2.